Hey, what's up, everybody? We are back on a Friday night, and we got a great show for you this week. This week, we're going to talk about Ezra Bridger and Thrawn being in live action. We're going to pit Crimson Dawn against the Hutts. And, of course, we've got 5 stories. That's right, 5 stories that we think should be made into Star Wars movies, and it all happens right now.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. 2 fans, 2 generations, all things Star Wars. Begins now.
All right, what's up, everybody? I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So there's been a lot going on over the last week or so.
Yeah, man, there's been a lot going on in the world, man. Fortunately, we've all been kind of trying to keep our heads above water with everything with, the kind of the downturn of the the whole COVID-19 thing.
You could say it. You could say it.
Yeah. So, but unfortunately, there's a lot, of course, civil unrest in the country, as we're seeing across these United States and even across the world, because even one of our own favorite Star Wars characters, John Boyega, he's a great actor, but he plays a character with Finn, but he's even taken a very passionate and very emotional stance and approach into the whole protesting and the treatment of African Americans, not just in the United States, but even around the world and in other countries, because even in London, he's experienced racism. So, it's great to see somebody like him being truly a rebel.
Well, it's also great to actually see people dealing with this in other countries.
Yeah.
Usually because this is somewhat of an American thing. I mean, it happens everywhere, but
True.
It's definitely so rooted in our history that you just kind of think of it, as happening as an American. Yeah, exactly. And the fact that there's people all around the world pretty much uniting, is actually kind of a cool thing to see. And it's sad that John Boyega actually thinks that his career's in jeopardy because of this, It's like...
Yeah, I mean, and that's unfortunate, but I mean, that's just the type of... It definitely shows the type of character that he has and the type of man that he is, that he's willing to forego that and put that on the line for the greater good of people. And, it kind of does remind you of that whole moment of Rise of Skywalker where, it's like, look, they made that call out to everybody and people didn't think that certain people would show up, but now everyone is showing up, in mass. And so that's one of the cool things about Star Wars is that it does kind of reflect what's going on in the world or in the country sometimes. And that's kind of what George Lucas kind of had in mind, when he created Star Wars.
All right. Well, I think it's a good time to mention that our friend White Elephant has joined us. He's saying, what's up, brothers?
Hey,
what's up, man? Good to see that you're with us, and we know that we've got people coming in. And of course, as we go along, people are going to come in, and hey, everybody is welcome to chat with us at any point during the show. We're trying a slightly different connection method and everything for this stream. So, let us know how the audio is and everything, and how everything is. We've actually upgraded some of our graphics a little bit, so. It should be good. Before we get to the Cantina thing,
okay.
Another thing that I just heard, I think today, is that, believe it or not, the whole Mace Windu as Snoke thing is making a comeback.
Really?
Yeah, really. I know.
Palpatine already just forget it. You know what?
Well, here's the whole thing, though. The reason why they're saying that this time is because he basically said that he made Snoke. And the idea is that he made Snoke out of some Jedi or something like that, that he basically preserved the life of...
Mace Windu.
Yeah.
So wait, let me get this straight. So Mace Windu and a host of other Jedi from the Council barge in on the Emperor. Well, he wasn't the Emperor at the time. Barge in on Palpatine.
Right.
Try to arrest him. Palpatine dispatches them very easily. Then he ends up in a one-on-one duel with Master Mace Windu. Anakin shows up, cuts off his arm with his hands, and then Palpatine then blasts him with like a big volley of lightning out a window that seems to be quite a substantial from a substantial height.
Hey, it's possible, though, that he could have used the Force to slow his fall.
So then Palpatine somehow scoops his remains, which are probably splattered all over Coruscant's
Hey, Sith have powers that some consider to be unnatural. But hey, we've got some more people chatting. We've got Ronaldo from Puerto Rico. Or not Puerto Rico, I'm sorry. His last name is Porto. He's from Honduras. Big fan from Honduras. Hey, man, we're glad to have you. It's really cool. And, of course, White Elephant's been chatting up a storm. He's talking about he was gone the last few weeks, and he might be gone for the next few. You know what? That's cool, man. There's always a replay, and even us, next week, we're going to have to do a pre-recorded one, another one. Hopefully those will slow down. But I got another big job thing that I got to do, and unfortunately it's going to be on the weekend. We're still going to be here Friday nights at 8 o'clock. We're going to do the same thing. We'll try to chat, because actually on Friday, I think, you know what? We'll play with it. We'll see. I'm going to say to be safe, we'll do the pre-recorded thing, but I should be free Friday night at 8.
Okay.
Which means I can hop in on the chat, so we can chat with you guys. It'll be actually pretty cool. But it's good to see that everybody is with us and joining us, because this is what we love. We love to talk to you guys. We'd like to, of course, we have all this stuff that we talk about Star Wars wise, but we love to chat with you guys. White Elephant's basically saying that Snoke is 7 feet tall. I don't know how tall Mace Windu is. Well, he's not 7 feet tall.
Exactly.
But again, I still say, though, that, and again, I know it's going to sound like I'm agreeing with this theory, but I'm not. I mean, I can see the resemblance, and I can see where they might think that this is possible, but
yes and no from me.
At some point in the Star Wars world, guys, we just have to start accepting the fact that
people die.
Well, not only that, but not everybody is this person or that person's kid or something like that. I mean,
Scooby-Doo, when you put the mask off. Mace Windu.
Mace Windu. Yeah, exactly. And I would have gotten away with it, too, if it weren't for you meddling kids. But, seriously, not every new character is the reincarnation or whatever of some old character. Remember that whole rumor that they came up with about Baby Yoda is supposed to be Yoda reincarnated? I think we did a whole show on that, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
Once again, it's not necessarily like that. So I'm all riled up. What do you say we go to get a drink?
Hey, let's go.
All right, here we go. Going to the Cantina, guys. All right, so here we are in the Cantina. This, of course, is where we talk about some general Star Wars stuff. So if you guys want to chime in and, whatever, we're here. We're all in the Cantina together. Oh, White Elephant basically says, still doesn't make sense to me at all since Mace Windu came back as a Force voice. That's a good point. In The Rise of Skywalker, he was one of the voices that was telling Rey to, I don't know, what were they saying?
Well, it was basically, basically it was like Jedi and Force encouragement.
Yeah.
Jedi Force affirmations. It's like, you are the Jedi, all that stuff, and, trust the Force. Yeah,
I don't know why I blanked out. I literally cannot remember at all what they said to her.
See, what would have been funny? I always thought this would have been funny if they actually had Chirrut Imwe. The one with the Force sister with me. Like if they just had him.
Did you see that thing that I sent you? The how it should have ended dub thing or whatever, where they were basically talking. I mean, they had a whole really hilarious thing about that part of it, where it was kind of like I forgot what they did. See, all these things. You know what? I saw this a long time ago, and I don't remember what it was.
Like how Force One, Rogue One should have ended.
No. It was The Rise of Skywalker, but it was that whole scene with the Jedi and everything, and it was, you know what? I'll dig it up and put it in the show notes. It was really, really funny.
Well, I think our first story.
Now we could get to our first story.
Yeah, our first story, man, is kind of cool, and so Dave Filoni, the creator of Clone Wars and Rebels, pretty much said that there actually may be there's talks of an actual live action version of having Ezra Bridger pop up.
Yeah, aren't they casting him?
Yeah, they actually have people now that they actually have are kind of combing around for that position. So one of the people, and I did think of this because remember we talked about it before, and it was like a speculation type thing. But now we mentioned Tom Holland, the guy who played Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, right.
But another person I didn't think of then, but I thought of like later on. I got it home, and it's funny because he's actually auditioned for the role. It's the guy who played Aladdin in the live action. Aladdin.
Yeah. I saw that,
like,
he would be perfect.
Yeah, he would be perfect.
He would actually be better than Tom Holland,
exactly,
honestly,
because he has the complexion of Ezra. And this particular.
Well, let's face it. We used to call Ezra Aladdin. Remember when the show first came on?
Yeah, we did.
We kept saying, "Dude, it's Aladdin." Not only did he look like him, but he basically
was kind of like acting like.
Yeah,
him.
it seemed like he was modeled after him.
Yeah,
like we started singing songs from the Aladdin thing when we were watching him. It was kind of mean, but it was actually pretty funny.
So the story says the lead of Star Wars Rebels, Ezra Bridger, is indeed coming to live action. The ongoing casting search is focused on finding a male between the ages of 30 to 40. They're looking for an actor of color, specifically performers of Asian descent. However, they are open to Indian, Latino, or Middle Eastern actors as well. Additionally, we know that the Ezra Bridger casting is for a Disney Plus debut. While we were assured that it is not for the Mandalorian specifically. So
yeah, well, they had to put that in there because it's like every news story, it seems, is something about the Mandalorian season 2.
Yeah, and I remember, and so we talked about a lot about Ahsoka Tano, so they're actually kind of putting these two together where Ahsoka Tano is actually searching for Ezra. So the Ahsoka Tano story, this may be where Ezra pops up because she's kind of getting her own thing, and it may also be coupled with that whole Star Wars show where it's predominantly women. So all this might be tied in together, or there may be some parts in there that are with that and something.
Yeah, but okay, let's just take it from this standpoint. If you are the one running Lucasfilm, and let's face it, I mean, why not?
Might as well. Can't drop.
How would you?
Than this.
First of all, would you do a live action Ezra? And then secondly, if you chose to, where would you put him? How would you feature him? Because if you really stop and think about it, this is somewhat of a bold move on their part.
Well, yeah, because like once again, and I think the problem with this, and like I say, first to appease the fans, especially you, my friend, I would definitely have to have a good story that actually warrants this, and it has to be
assuming
planned out.
Let me preface this by saying, assuming that there was a really good story, but where would you put him?
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, you either have to take this story, if you're putting Ezra at 30 or 40 years old, then that means it's probably post Return of the Jedi. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
If you put in there, yeah. So it's probably got to be roughly around that time.
Well, that's why I think people thought The Mandalorian.
So now the question is, it's like, okay, well, where were you and Ahsoka doing all this?
See, that's the problem I have with all this stuff. It's like,
that's going to be the biggest issue. So you're going to have to explain that right off the bat. Like pretty much between episodes 1 and 2.
They better have like an opening crawl or something that just,
or at least like with 1 and 2, they have to like pretty much talk about like what went on, or maybe show. Now, what would be cool is if they did like a juxtaposition type thing. Like they might mention something like, oh, did you hear that? Vader has, blown up Alderaan or something like that, or if they mention something to the effect of whatever's going on in the timeline of the original trilogy, so that way we kind of know where we are. Or like I said, if it's going to take place, like if Ahsoka's around doing the original trilogy, but she hasn't found Ezra yet until post Jedi, then it's like, okay, well now you have to explain what was Ezra, what was he doing.
Well, and
then now on top of that, where do you go with that? Because obviously you're not a Jedi because you didn't complete your training. So he's kind of like another Kanan, really.
Unless Ahsoka completes it.
Possibly.
But here's the thing, too. I mean, my whole thing is like this. Okay, Ahsoka gets introduced in Mandalorian.
Okay.
All right, so that might spin off into her own series.
Right.
That's been kind of
that's
confirmed.
confirmed, right.
Because it hasn't been denied by Disney. And as far as I'm concerned, if Disney's out there or Lucasfilm's not out there denying it, it's probably true. So it seems like what they're doing is they're introducing a character in one series, and then they're using that as like a jumping point to introduce more characters.
Yeah.
And my biggest issue, again, I have mixed feelings about this, because on one hand, I definitely want to see all these animated characters that we love so much make their way into live action, particularly Ahsoka. But even Ezra, I can handle that. The only thing is, though, the question comes, where on earth do we put all this stuff?
Well, the only way
You know, because it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, okay, if you do it, say, around the time of Return of the Jedi, or like just after it, well, now you're in Mandalorian territory. And that makes sense, because if that's where you're going to introduce Ahsoka again, it makes sense that, well, what about everybody else? What was everybody else doing?
So here's how I can see some things going. So with the Mandalorian being a bounty hunter, I can see this happening a couple of ways. So let's say Ahsoka is looking for she's trying to find Ezra, and for whatever reason she can't find Ezra. Ezra is probably like on some, I mean, the galaxy is a big place, so he could be anywhere. But let's just say, okay, she runs into the Mandalorian. He has this child, the asset, if you will. So it's like, okay.
Are we not calling him Baby Yoda anymore?
I still call him Baby Yoda sometimes.
Like, when did that go away?
Well, yeah, it's never gone away. But so you have Baby Yoda with the Mandalorian. She recognizes, like, oh, this is the same species as my old master, Master Yoda. She senses the Force is strong within this particular child. Maybe she helps the Mandalorian return Baby Yoda back to his home world or wherever he's supposed to get to, and at that point, maybe she puts on, like, she makes the Mandalorian, or asks the Mandalorian to help her find Ezra, since he's a bounty hunter. And so then maybe he might locate, hey, I found who you were looking for. He's on this particular planet by going by this name, or whatever the case may be. You'll find him there. And then that ends Ahsoka's story as far as the Mandalorian is concerned. So then now when you pick up you pick up Ahsoka's show, now she's on her way to that particular place to find and confront Ezra.
Yeah, I mean, that's one possibility. And again, they could do a lot of different things with this. It's just like you said, though, they have to have a good story. I mean, they have to have a good story, and they also have to have a purpose for bringing these characters out, because on one hand, we've been wanting some new things. And I think that they gave that to us with The Mandalorian, and I honestly think that that's one of the reasons why The Mandalorian is so popular. It's because
it's fresh.
It's fresh. Obviously, there's some familiar
territory.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't...
Escapes, yeah. But it's
Has there actually... Well...
It's familiar, like, okay, you're
like, there's IG-11 instead of IG-88 or something, but as far as I know, there really hasn't been any original trilogy or any other characters brought in.
No, I mean, outside of Boba Fett.
Well,
but
yeah.
I mean, I think that what's happening is with the Mandalorian, it's a familiar landscape. Like I said, you're in a familiar world where it's like, okay, it's post Return of the Jedi. You know, a lot of these different places kind of look like Tatooine, or could be Mos Eisley, or, you know, so it's familiar landscape. It looks like Star Wars. But you're not necessarily at. You don't have a whole lot of people, like you said, from the original trilogy. So I think that's what's cool about it, is because you can kind of start off fresh in a familiar place. That's what I'm kind of getting at. Yeah,
and that's basically it. I don't mind the places being familiar at all. Like, I'm actually okay with that. And I think that that's a logical way of putting familiarity into these shows or movies, or, you know, wherever they end up going. That's a good way of doing it. But I hope they don't fall into the trap of, instead of okay, we're going to follow, like, once again, like Solo was a Han Solo origin story, essentially. And we didn't really need that. And the fans basically, you and I both really enjoyed Solo. We thought it was great. And I would like to see a lot of that continue on in maybe a Disney Plus series. But again, I don't need to see the origin of Boba Fett, the origin of Yoda, the origin of Mace Windu. I don't need to see all that.
Right.
What would be cool is to actually introduce new characters.
Or expand the ones that we haven't got a chance to, like they are with Ahsoka or Ezra. Like, because these are characters that were new, but there's not a whole lot of...
Yeah, and I guess I'm okay with that, because actually this is going to go back on my point a little bit, because I almost was going to argue against that. I was almost going to say, no, let's not see... I don't want them to fall into the trap of where it's new-ish. Like, okay, let's just give us all these live-action versions of all these characters that have been around. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and I wouldn't mind having that, but at the same time, I hope that doesn't become the new MO for Lucasfilm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely understand that. I mean, I just think that if it's warranted, yes. If there's truly a story there, then cool. If not, then okay, we don't need it. And I guess my gauge is like, how many stories can you really get, or how, like, okay, if we're gonna do, say, a 10-episode story arc, I mean, hopefully, preferably an hour, then it's like, okay, if you can go 5 seasons, okay, cool. If it's only like 1 or 2 seasons, is it really necessary? Probably not.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, because, and again, I think I hate to keep harping on this, but I think it comes down to having a plan. Right. You have to have a plan.
Exactly.
Which they didn't really seem to have for the sequel trilogy. So my thinking is, as long as they have a plan for whatever they're going to do, from now on, that's great. But they have to have some sort of a plan moving forward. And if they're going to start bringing out all these characters, I hope they actually have a plan for that. I hope they have an end game for that. So maybe, say, Ezra doesn't get his own series, but I hope whatever story arc he has, they have an end game. Like, they have a basic story outlined.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's always going to be the thing that drives anything, is the story. And we've even learned from watching the Star Wars Gallery thing that...
yeah, did they do another episode today?
I don't know. I didn't get a chance to look at it.
Yeah, I'm
still trying to catch up on some of the other ones, actually.
What's the last one you saw?
The characters. They were talking about, like...
I think they've had 4 of them now.
I think I'm on like 4 or 5. So this, like, I think on the one they're talking about, they just finished talking to Carl Weathers about his character Grief. And how Gina Serrano was just like in love with the way that she was almost like telling like Carl Weathers poetry almost. It was kind of, you can even tell Carl Weathers was kind of like, dang, I didn't expect all this. Like,
yeah, I remember that was hilarious.
She was like kind of gushing over him. And I was just like, all right.
Hey man, he was Apollo Creed.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
and he was Dutch from Predator.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean,
come on, man. You can't go wrong. This guy's played some very iconic characters.
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, he's a great actor. And the fact that he even came out of retirement just to kind of do this was cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly didn't even know he was retired until I read, I came out of retirement or whatever. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, I mean, you weren't used to him acting in a lot of really well-known stuff anyway. There was always, it seemed, a pretty good amount of space between films. I mean, he was rumored actually for in Creed 2 they were going to do a flashback scene or like some sort of Creed Force Ghost kind of thing. Well, actually, it would have been more like a Han Solo thing. It would have been a Han Solo thing.
Like a dream or something like that.
Yes. Okay, so White Elephant is saying the most important thing Disney can do to keep Star Wars afloat is to make sure the stories don't contradict themselves or the content we already have. Yes. This is another problem. I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because I kind of had that point, and then I lost it. one of the dangers of them bringing out all these different characters is they're going to start screwing with the continuity of stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you got to be careful, like I said, because when you're bringing in people who are in the same, who from a different era, but then they're popping up in a era there where a lot of stuff, like I said, the original trilogy, like, okay, well, how do you explain Ahsoka like not being around when all
Yeah,
this
and
is
so
going
far
on?
they've done that fairly well.
Yeah.
But absolutely, man, they're going to start messing with the continuity of everything. They're going to start, and then it's like, yeah, you got to explain their absence.
Yeah, you have to explain why. And then it's like, okay, well, why didn't you get in the fight? Well, I feel like I had to go elsewhere and do this. Okay, fine. I mean, like I said, I'm sure they can come up with plausible reasons.
Well, because, so the original, and if you guys know this, chime in. Hit us up in the chat. But how many total years was there between 4 and 6?
Star Wars episode 4.
So I think between 4 and 5 was like 1 year. I'm pretty sure it was 1 year between 4 and 5. I think it was. Yeah. See.
You said 4 and 6.
Yeah. Speak closer to your mic too. I thought so. Your mic's a little bit lower than mine. I think. Yeah. And just speak up, too. Yeah, like I said, guys, we tried this slightly new way of doing stuff, so it's, once again, we're always trying to improve things here. But invariably, because we're kind of running it all ourselves, I need to get a crew. That's what I need to do. But, yeah, he'll talk closer to his mic and speak up. But, yeah, how many years between 4 and 6? I think it's 1 year between 4 and 5, and I think it's maybe 2. So we might be talking like a 5-year period.
Let's see.
It's something like that.
Yeah, it's got.
But my point is that there's a big chunk of time between 4 and 6. There's enough of a period of time that they have to explain where all these characters have been if you're going to keep bringing them up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's really the big thing is that you really do have to explain that. But, okay, and these are like pivotal characters. It's not like just some, like, okay, who cares what Kanan Jarrus was, what I'm saying? Like, but Ahsoka Tano is like the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker. Like, where the heck were you? I mean, we know you've had, your battle with him that one time. But if you survived, obviously.
Right.
Like, okay. And then I'm sure you're hearing, like, about the stories of Luke Skywalker. That should trigger you. Because his name is being peddled around the whole galaxy. So it's like, okay, he's the guy who blew up the Death Star. Vader knew about it. I'm sure there's talks about in bars and other little, watering holes and the little nooks and crannies in the galaxy where people are like, hey, this guy Luke Skywalker. Well, she's going to be like, Skywalker? Well, hold on.
So White Elephant says, the second most important thing Disney can do is make a Mel Gibson movie. Yes, the Mel Gibson. And I did share that hashtag. You saw that. Where we need a Mel Gibson Star Wars movie. So he thinks that basically that there's 5 to 6 years between the two, and I think that's true. Episode 5 and 6 can't be too far apart since Han Solo is in Carbonite. Yeah, I really honestly think that there is only 1 year between 4 and 5, and maybe 2 or 3 years between. It's probably only like a year or two. There probably isn't really a whole lot of time between 4 and 6.
No, it can't. Well, because like I said, 4, you got Luke. He's probably about 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
So then when you look at like 6 in Return of the Jedi, he looks like he's about 25. Mm-hmm. I mean, he definitely looks more mature the way he carries himself. So I think that's the objective.
Right.
So, yeah,
right.
He's probably like 25 years old.
So Ronaldo thinks that there's 19 years between 3 and 4. He read somewhere. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there is 19 years between 3 and 4. So that's the thing that's interesting is that so the prequels there was actually a little bit of time. Because, I mean, there was like a good, 10 years between 1 and 2? Because Anakin was like 9 and then he was 19 or something.
Right.
2 and 3 happens like maybe a year? 2 years?
No.
Or was it?
It's got to be like...
Oh, right, because old Clone Wars takes place there.
Yeah. So the Clone Wars lasted maybe, 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
And especially, you see a big jump between Anakin as far as even look like, okay, he's filled out, he's grown up, a lot between 2 and 3.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
And then White Elephant says that 5 and 6 could be farther apart since Luke becomes a full-fledged Jedi Knight. But, yeah, again, that's where it gets a little bit weird even within Episode 5. Because in The Empire Strikes Back, there was always this controversy about how long a period of time was he on Dagobah. They always, there's some people that are saying it was a week. Some people are saying a month. But when you look at it against the whole Han and Leia thing, it's like, things are happening. But then again, they're going through hyperspace, to get to Bespin. Who knows how long? Well, actually, no, they weren't, because the drive wasn't really working. But, I mean, that's the whole thing, is that we're not really sure with all the travel time and everything. So it's...
Well, you have to stand the reason that Luke definitely... It couldn't be like a week or anything, because, I mean, if you really, really, truly look at it, from the time that Luke spent time with Yoda, okay, there's no way in a week's time. I mean, because you're basically looking at this point, Luke could barely lift rocks in Empire. So you mean to tell me in a week, now all of a sudden he's this bold and gonna be able to go against the Emperor?
No. No. Not between 5 and 6. I'm talking about strictly Episode 5. How long was he on Dagobah in Episode 5 before he went to Bespin to save his friends? They're theorizing is a... Yeah, no, dude. No. It's not like, oh, yeah, look, he's a... Yeah, no, that would be crazy.
Yeah,
no.
All right. I digress.
See, that's the thing, is that time is so wonky in Episode 5 because you really don't know how much time is transpiring.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the one hand, you had the Han, Leia, Lando story, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had the Luke on Dagobah story.
Right.
And the thing is that in neither one of those subplots, there's nothing really to mark time. You really don't know how long they're taking. You can't go by the Han and Leia storyline because who knows how long it's taking for them to fly in these various places, especially with no light speed.
Well, you also have to look at it from the standpoint of, too, all right, they were inside the mouth of that alien on the asteroid.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, well, how long were you in there before you decided to bail out of there after the Minox start chewing on the cable? So
exactly. We don't even know how long they were in that creature.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So it's exactly, and that's where it gets kind of weird. Now, White Elephant has a couple of things. He's like, I honestly want the Ahsoka story to get wrapped up, but I really want to see it. I hope they make it a bigger priority and finish it. I think they're going to.
Yeah.
I think that's the whole point. I don't think, first of all, I don't think it's going to be a simple thing where you get Ahsoka for 3 episodes and then we're all done. I don't think that they would bother bringing the Ahsoka character out unless one of two things. One, they had a really critical storyline that they wanted to tell in The Mandalorian, and they felt like, okay, Ahsoka is the perfect vessel for this story. On the other hand, they also might have this whole future franchise in mind based around Ahsoka, and The Mandalorian seems to be, I guess, the most logical launching point. Yeah. And then, of course, White Elephant also says, to be honest, I want to know how many people that don't care about Rebels want an Ezra movie. It's a good point. Because as widely popular as the animated series, both the Clone Wars and Rebels, most of the casual Star Wars fans have no idea they exist. Or if they do, it's like they know they're out there, but they don't care.
True, but I think also you have to look at it to the standpoint, and he makes a good point. Who really cares about Ezra?
That was actually my thing.
Because, I mean, don't get me wrong. Okay, I can understand for the purpose of Rebels. Okay, he was cool. But, I mean, like, Ahsoka, you know, of course, everybody hated her when she first got there. But then as she grew, you know, you begin to, like, fall in love with her.
Yeah, dude. People were like, and hey, look, I was one of them.
Right.
I mean, you know as well as anybody, the one thing that I was whining about when we saw the Clone Wars movie, and I mean, I was in full rant mode.
Yes, you were.
Like, big time. I remember that day, actually.
Yes.
You know, we got out of the movie, and I was just like, you have got to be kidding me. You know, in my opinion, she was Jar Jar Part 2. No kidding.
Yeah.
I just was not into this character at all. I found her to be annoying. I thought that it was kind of stupid. And now, for a while now, actually by the time, like, especially season 5 of the Clone Wars, but even season 4, I'm like, I love Ahsoka. I mean, I think she's also one of the first where we see a real growth.
Yeah.
You know, and
basically a child to a full adult.
I mean, Anakin.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Anakin's one of the main characters that we were already introduced to as an adult, and then we're going back.
Not only that, but I mean, like, there was serious jumps in his growth. Like, you went from like 9 to 19. That's a lot of space.
That's true.
And then
that's
you go
true.
from 19 to 25. That's another big chunk.
Sure. And
but
Ahsoka?
Ahsoka, you're pretty much watching like a 12-year-old. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, okay, she's like 12, and then okay, she's getting old. She's like about 15 now. And you can tell, like, all right, she's about 18 here. Like
you actually saw it right closer. Because you saw it more. I mean, not in absolute real time, but closer to real time.
And so then by the time you get to see her in Rebels,
now that there was a jump though.
There was a jump, but then you see like the grace, and then it's like, whoa, like, and it was the same way we felt about Luke jumping from Empire to Return of the Jedi. You're like, this isn't the same person because the presence is different.
That's it. Then that's actually a really good way of saying it. It's the presence.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, Luke in Return of the Jedi had a presence that just wasn't there in Empire.
Right.
You know, and Ahsoka definitely has a presence in Rebels that was not there even in season 5. And I mean, she was.
And that's why I didn't have an issue with Ahsoka. You know, I remember you and I kind of debated about it because I didn't have an issue with Ahsoka because I knew where she was, but I just didn't know how much of a pivotal role she was going to play.
That's what I was afraid of.
But the thing was that, like, Luke was annoying.
Well, and yeah, you pointed these things out to me.
Luke was annoying. Anakin was annoying. They're kids, and they're supposed to be. You know, I mean, we worked with students. I still do. They're annoying. So, but you do see the maturation of, like, man, like our own partner. Ed.
It was some of the stuff though, like, to keep calling him Sky Guy and all this other stupid, like, they can make him be a kid without, and this is pod racing. I mean, it's just like some of the stuff was just it was badly written.
That's over the top. Right.
Yeah, it was over the top stuff that kids don't even necessarily, you know, it just didn't feel right. And it felt kind of stupid. So White Elephant also says, I feel like people would care if they knew Darth Maul or Thrawn would be in it. Well, hold on for Thrawn. We're going to get to Thrawn in a second. But you're absolutely right.
Get to the Admirals in a minute.
Exactly. The bottom line is, who cares about Ezra?
Exactly. Like,
why are they bringing? That's why it tells me that there's got to be some sort of crazy storyline where they feel they need him. See, because this is the kind of thing that I always think.
The need, yes.
And this is what actually excites me about it, is the fact that it's like, okay, we have this story, and, well, you know, who's the vessel that's going to be able to tell the story? It's got to be this character. So they obviously feel they need Ezra for something. And that kind of leads us into our next topic.
Yes, it does.
And that is, will we see a live-action Thrawn? And I think that a lot of it is starting to tie together. You're seeing Ahsoka coming back. You're seeing now they're casting Ezra. When last, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time I believe we left Thrawn and Ezra, they both went into the unknown regions together at the end of Rebels, did they not? You're like, I don't know.
Honestly, I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure they did. I'm pretty
But
sure that was the case.
The other thing, though, is like, okay, so here's the thing with Thrawn. So it says the long-awaited debut of Ahsoka Tano in live action is reportedly happening when The Mandalorian Season 2 hits in the fall, alongside fellow animation characters Sabine Wren.
Yeah, now that's
Captain
another
Rex,
one, right?
And Bo-Katan's.
Now, I knew about Captain Rex and Bo-Katan, but it's like they just kind of threw Sabine in there, sort of like as a...
Now, here's what I'm hearing. Now, this is a wild one.
All right, well, I'm strapped down, so it's okay.
So, they are speculating that Sabine Wren is actually Boba
Fett. Is that where they got the whole thing about Boba Fett being a woman?
Yeah.
Nillatube, a newcomer. Nothing is better than seeing Daryl's happiness. Somebody you know, right?
Oh, Lord Jesus. Yes. I know who that is.
I was going to say,
Like,
I mean...
what's going on, Billy? So extra.
Well, hopefully you guys can hear him better now.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully. We'll get that fixed next time, I promise. But yeah, just keep speaking up and screaming into the mic, and I think we're good.
All right, I just have to remember I'm at a protest.
There you go. Use your protest voice.
I almost took me out of here.
Oh, man, I'm sorry, man. But
You should be ashamed for doing that.
But that would actually make sense, though. Because if they were going to do this whole Boba Fett's a woman thing, again, and they could talk about how they just altered the voice box or whatever. But they have Tamira Morrison coming back.
Yeah, so what they're speculating is that Tamira Morrison comes out of the Sarlacc pit, and then at some point, I forgot the guy's name, but he basically gets a hold of the Mandalorian armor, and then Sabine actually takes it from him because she's of Mandalorian descent, and so she's like, "This is our armor. I need to wear it." And so then now she's masquerading, I guess, as Boba Fett.
What about Timothy Oliphant, who's supposed to be wearing his armor?
That's the one who I couldn't think of his name.
Ah.
So she takes it from him.
Okay. All right. Oh, boy. So now White Elephant's like, amen at Nillatube. Hey, what about my happiness, guys? Hello? Host over here. I mean, okay, I guess as long as Daryl's happy,
Hey.
that's cool. But White Elephant also says the live-action Thrawn almost seems too good to be true. Boy, I really messed that up. One day I'll learn to read. That would be the best. Yeah, it does seem almost too good to be true, but I really hope so. I mean, I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, is that mildly confirmed, the whole Thrawn thing, or what?
Well, the Thrawn thing is pretty much confirmed. So it says insider Daniel Richmond has claimed that his Patreon that a live action debut of Grand Admiral Thrawn is on the way. No additional details were shared.
Yeah, because isn't he the guy that voiced him in Rebels?
Daniel Richmond, yeah.
Okay, so White Elephant says, I don't understand female Boba Fett since we saw him in Episode 2 Unmasked. Good point. Very good point.
So, female Boba Fett.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. We saw Boba Fett in Attack of the Clones. Daniel Logan played him.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Boba Fett also we saw in Clone Wars.
Yeah, but he's being replaced. That's what I'm saying.
Well, yeah. Okay, so you're saying the Boba Fett that we know comes out of the Sarlacc pit, and then Sabine...
So that
either takes his armor or kills him or something.
Yeah, and then Timothy Oliphant's character, he retrieves that armor because I think he came out. He barely makes it out of the Sarlacc pit, and then
remember, Oliphant's not playing. Well, it depends because we know Tamira Morrison's coming back to voice, but it would make sense that he could play him because he's the clone. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying? So now you've got all these people possibly playing Boba Fett.
Yeah.
So it's like, would the real Boba Fett please stand up?
Yes, I know.
Or please launch your jetpack or something, because it's crazy. Well, it's like, but Sabine is lit. I want her to come back with the dark saber. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, that would be dope.
That would be cool. He also said if Timothy Zahn directed the movie, it would be perfect. Well, that's the thing that's weird. I'm betting more towards the TV series Disney Plus thing for Thrawn.
Yeah.
Did they even say what series? No, there actually isn't that much information, is there?
Well, for where Thrawn's going to actually come.
Yeah.
No, but more than likely, it'll probably be in the whole Ahsoka series. It would make the most sense, at least, in my opinion.
Well, here's
because now you got
here's
Ahsoka,
my thoughts.
Ezra, they're all in that same.
See,
period.
that's the thing. Ezra, Thrawn, they got to be linked together.
Yeah, that's
so
what I'm
wherever Ezra goes, Thrawn will go.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's going to be in Mandalorian.
No, I don't think we're going to see Thrawn in Mandalorian.
No. But I mean,
again, you're bringing too much into. See, the problem is, and this is the issue that I have with Mandalorian season 2, which I'm excited for. I can't wait.
But you're skeptical, aren't you?
Well, I'm not necessarily.
You can say it.
I'm
it's
not
cool.
necessarily skeptical because I trust Filoni and Favreau.
Well, that's true.
But
Good point.
I will say this. What I don't want to happen is because you have to remember the name of the show is The Mandalorian. So we're supposed to be focused on him and his journey. What we don't want is too many things that are detracting from him. So it's like, okay, we already have Baby Yoda. We already have Bo-Katan. We already have Sabine Wren. Now we got Boba Fett. Now we got Ezra and Ahsoka. And, so it's like, okay, we have way too many people that are interacting.
Well, don't forget, there's also Michael Bihn's bounty hunter character.
Yep, Jamie Lee Curtis is supposed to be in there.
Right. Then you also have Grand Moff Gideon.
Oh yeah, Moff Gideon. Yep.
Moff Gideon. Yeah, I'm promoting him.
Yes. Well deserved, but
yeah,
Moff Gideon. But at least those guys are supposed to be there. At least Moff Gideon's supposed to be there.
Well, all right, but here, Baby Yoda could have easily have stolen the show, but he didn't. He was perfectly placed. Bo-Katan, we think is the armorer.
Yeah.
Okay, perfectly placed.
Right.
So just because you have all these characters doesn't necessarily mean that it's the Batman syndrome where they're just jamming people in and not.
Right.
But I'll tell you what concerns me more.
That's what's concerning me, though, is like, I get the fact that you have this framework and it's like, yeah, you bring things in when you need to, but it's like, you don't want to bring things in. I guess if they came in for like a cameo or like for a quick episode or something like that, and then they're gone. But it's like you keep showing all these different people. People are kind of like, okay, well, what's going on with this? I just don't want it to detract from the actual character.
Well, here's what worries me more, and this goes to your point. If you're only going to have 30-minute episodes, that's where I start to go, yeah, how are you going to jam all these people in?
Yeah.
Especially because they're 20, 30-minute episodes over 8 episodes?
So you pretty much have to use one of these people every episode. You almost have a special guest every episode.
Yeah. Now, again, one of the things that I think there were some, I wouldn't call them filler, but there were definitely filler moments. Maybe not filler episodes, but filler moments. Mm-hmm. If they gave us a Mandalorian that was completely just lean and mean, streamlined,
action-packed the whole way through.
Not even just action-packed, but as long as everything was meaty.
That's what I mean by action-packed. It's not necessarily an action of blowing up stuff, but I mean action-packed in the sense of everything is moving the action. It's moving the story. If it had that vibe to it, so we're now having, in what we say in the martial arts, we're no wasted movement. It's just okay, every movement is intentional. It's not just
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, White Elephant's got a couple comments here. I just want Timothy Zahn to be the head guy. Even Dave Filoni and Mel Gibson and George Lucas are unworthy of this project.
Oh, wow.
Well, I understand his point, though, because Thrawn was his creation. It was not Lucas's creation, much like Ahsoka is Filoni's creation. So
I see his point.
See what I'm saying? Or what he's saying? Or what we're all saying?
Somebody's saying.
Yeah, somebody's saying. So this makes sense. That you should, if Zahn isn't, because let's face it, he's an author. I don't think that the guy has any show running experience or anything like that. Right. But he needs to be very much a consultant.
Yeah, as far as who this guy is.
Yeah, now, to be fair, White Elephant, I don't think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you saw Rebels yet. I know maybe it was Deepy Dishy that didn't. Somebody never really saw Rebels or Clone Wars or whatever. I think it was. But I will say that Filoni did handle Thrawn pretty well in Rebels.
Yeah, he did an excellent job with it.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily think that they're in bad shape. But, you know, I mean, hey, so now funny. Sorry I don't know your name. I like your happiness. Your happiness doesn't come close to Daryl's, though. But your stallion tail makes things even out, haha.
Stallion tail?
Yeah, I know.
You got a new name now.
I know. Oh, yeah, here it comes.
Here it goes.
New nicknames.
Yep, we getting T-shirts.
Yeah, you would do that to me,
oh,
too.
And your birthday's coming up? Definitely.
You know what? Because I was going to do it, and I'm going to do it. I was digging through my closet the other day because I was trying to get rid of some old clothes. And I ran across like all these Star Wars T-shirts I didn't even realize I had.
Oh, wow.
One of them's a Jar Jar one.
You just made somebody on this chat very happy. You're going to see it in the chat in a minute. They're going to respond. I know exactly who's going to respond, but the fact that you mentioned Jar Jar, they're going to be very happy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things that... Look... Let me just clarify. Let me just clarify the whole Jar Jar thing right now, okay? As a general rule,
go on.
As a general rule, it's not that I necessarily think that the Jar Jar character is bad. He's another one that I think was just poorly written. And I'm at best with what was there. He did an absolute amazing job, and everybody forgets that that was the first CGI character, like fully CGI character ever. The problem that I felt with Jar Jar was the fact that while Star Wars is for kids, I think that was just a little bit, like, you don't really get a Jar Jar in the original trilogy.
Right.
You know, you don't get anything that over the top, and I think Lucas just kind of, you know, Jar Jar's his favorite character.
Well, the Jar Jar in the original trilogy was wicked.
Yeah, well, yeah, but okay, even if that's the case, Wicket isn't, I mean, he annoyed me. He annoyed a lot of us, all right? Oh, I'm not going to lie. Hey, look, I will put it out there. Right? I will fully admit to my Jar Jar apprehension and my Wicket. I've softened on Wicket a little bit, but not much. I still think that the Ewok thing was so stupid. See, the original plan for that, as you know, was it was going to be Wookiees.
Yeah, that would have been dope.
That would have made more sense.
Definitely.
A bunch of teddy bears, like, killing the Empire. You know, I get the allegory. You know, it's kind of like a Vietnam War kind of thing where it was sort of like you had this really high-tech government, you know, army type of a thing against a more primitive, but they knew that territory, they knew that land. Yeah. They actually used a lot of those advantages. I get it. It just would have made a lot more sense if it had been Wookiees and not little cuddly teddy bears on meth. That's all I'm saying.
I got it.
You know, Jar Jar, same thing. The other Gungans didn't bother me. I mean, Boss Nass's stupid little... that, like, when he would have to shake it. Yeah, that irritated me to no end. Yeah. But the Gungans themselves were cool. And Jar Jar's whole story about when he was banished and he had to almost like make amends. And, you know, I mean, there is a cool story there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was more of a cultural thing, and that was cool. I mean, the fact that you had this whole... I mean, it was kind of cool. It kind of had like a Atlantis kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, totally.
You know, where it's like, okay, this whole world lives basically like under the sea.
Or you know what? It actually,
mermaid.
when I saw Aquaman...
Yeah, it's like the little...
Kind of totally had that vibe. Little Mermaid.
The Little Mermaid, like the little Gungans or something. You know, it's just like... So...
Oh, that's too much.
You know, but I get it.
Yeah, but I mean... Again, those are elements. Because here's the problem I think that a lot of people have with Star Wars, and we talked about this a long time ago, is that as time goes on and all these different generations, because I'm of the original generation, I'm almost like 50 years old now. Mm-hmm. Well, you've had people like, you came under that, and then there's people that have come under that, and it's going to go on and on. So you have all this stuff where you could tell these very adult stories, like the Bloodline story.
Yeah.
The novel Bloodline. Yeah, perfect example. That's like a really good, almost like Tom Clancy-ish kind of thing. And I just think that there's a balance where it's true that Star Wars is made for kids, and we shouldn't lose sight of that, because it's basically teaching kids good moral stuff, through the use of these fantasy stories, which heaven knows we need that now more than ever.
Right.
But at the same time, they came up with this really cool universe that you could tell a lot of really cool adult-type stories. Yeah. And it's just that balance. And that's where I think the Mandalorian is cool. Because that's not made for kids. At least I don't think it's made for kids.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's made for little kids.
I guess it depends on what you're talking about as far as kids.
I would say like a teenager. I could see the Mandalorian because, he kind of starts off one way. This is kind of the way he is. And he's kind of like a loner. Yeah. But then like he's starting to learn how to trust people and trust things that he normally wouldn't trust.
Oh, don't get me wrong. There's like definite, moral of the story type themes going on. But I mean, it's not a kid's.
Yeah. It's not designed for like, a 7-year-old.
Right. But see, this is what I think is so great about Star Wars right now, is the fact that you have something like Star Wars Resistance, animated series, totally made for kids. White Elephant's got to go.
All right, man.
You know what? You ate up a good amount of the chat, though. We appreciate you hanging with us. And hey, hopefully, even if you can't be with us live, make sure you join us on that replay. And if any of you other guys are watching, make sure, you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on this video. If you like what you see, keep checking out this page for more content.
If you enjoy my happiness, keep coming.
Yes, if you want to make Daryl happy, subscribe to the channel. That'll make him really happy.
Yes.
But these are the kinds of things that I think they could do now that they really weren't in the position to do before, especially with Disney Plus, is they could start to make theme movies or themed TV series now. You can make something that's just for kids. You can make something that's just for adults. You can make something that maybe covers, the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And these are the kinds of things. Like Thrawn. I think Thrawn's a perfect example. Now, you have things that were basically made for both. I mean, look, Darth Vader, it's not really a kid-themed thing, but hey, every kid loved Darth Vader.
Yep.
Thrawn, he's a little bit more subtle about it. Any of the Sith Lords. I just think that it's one of those things that they really have to, moving forward, they have to think about who are they making these shows for. And so when you talk about something like bringing Thrawn into live action, how are you going to do that? You know what I mean? Are you gonna make a more kid-themed thing, or are you going to do the Mandalorian type of thing, or what?
No, I think with Thrawn, I think you have to play him exactly how Zahn wrote him, and I think
I wanted how I wrote it.
I knew you were going to go there.
You knew it.
But yeah, I think you have to. I think because that character demands it, and there's such a different type of character that you haven't really, when I say seen in Star Wars. Reading him in the novels is one thing. Seeing him on Rebels was another, which was a step in the right direction. And so I think in the live action version, I think you'll get the ultimate spectrum of who Thrawn is. And I think that because he's so cerebral, that would appeal to more so towards, a lot of kids, especially like the older kids, but then especially the adults. That was a cool thing about Thanos. Like if you really looked at Thanos is a lot like Thrawn, if you really look at it. Like, he has that ruthless, but that super calm demeanor. But when you look at him from a psychological profile, when you look at him from what his purpose was, like, the villain never sees himself as the enemy. And that's always the cool thing about Thrawn is like Thrawn was always kind of like he was very methodical about his approach on how he did things. He wasn't a crass guy, like he wasn't overly aggressive like Vader was a lot of times. He was very calm and calculated. It's almost kind of like Michael Myers in a way. Mm-hmm. How he kind of stalked you until he got to where he wanted you. He put you where he wanted you. And I think you've never really seen that. I think most kids have never really seen that in Star Wars. And so to actually see that, I think that would be really cool. And I think that's how you would have to play it. And I think the adults would get enjoyment out of that because the adults could relate to something like that, more of the cerebral, thought-provoking type of villain. And then I think the kids would be more akin to Ezra and Ahsoka.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing that can't be ignored too is that Thrawn is very much like the Sherlock Holmes of the Star Wars universe. It goes into when you're talking about he's very methodical and calculating, but he's also like he sees detail. He's like really he zeroes in on clues and things that people miss. He's totally like Sherlock Holmes. Mm-hmm. Particularly in the new Thrawn trilogy of novels. Mm-hmm. And I think that, yes, if they play up those things or whatever, there's still things that I think could appeal to both kids and adults. But I think that they just have to, like you said, take some characters and then you basically do a thing to where it's maybe more adult themed. And then you have other characters that maybe appeal to kids. Now, do you think we're ever going to see anything like the Bendu or? Because I mean, they really played up that storyline big time in Rebels. Yeah, for a while too.
But you know what? I would rather see the Bendu some bad. If they did that, I would rather see that in more of a Star Wars High Republic type situation. I think that's where that would be more applicable.
I'm still trying to get over the fact that that's not going to happen until January.
Oh, talking about the books, yeah.
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 Still, again, I'm not trying to go on another rant here, but really, it's a book. I mean,
and I heard they're already written already. That's all you understand.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, all I could think of is maybe the marketing or something. Because it's like, look, most people are buying books online. Let's face it. Mm-hmm. Nobody's running to the bookstore anymore.
All right.
At least not enough to warrant, like, hey, maybe we better wait till they reopen. Secondly, everything's reopening like every day now. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't seem to me like it should be a big deal. But whatever. I'll go. All right, so what do we got next?
So next, once again, dealing with Mandalorian. So apparently, yet another group, Knights of Ren.
Yeah, how many people could we sandwich into this series?
That's what I'm saying.
It's like they're going to have to make every episode like an hour.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the Star Wars like all cast review or something like that. It's ridiculous. But so apparently, Star Wars fans were left disappointed by the lack of screen time that the Knights of Ren were given in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, those poor guys.
I know, right? So luckily, it sounds like the Mandalorian would address at least some of it, and only in the Rise of Skywalker did we get a chance to see what they can do in battle, and not really, because we really didn't even see them really fight.
I was gonna say, what are you talking about? No, we didn't.
Because they just pretty much just stood there and just got their butts kicked by Kylo.
I mean, we did see a little bit in that first scene though, when they were with Kylo.
Oh, you talking about when they were kind of running through the forest?
Yeah, on that weird like red foresty ashy planet or whatever.
Yeah, and everything was like in 24p. But so apparently they're supposed to actually kind of go over the fact that they were always under the command of Ben Solo, having followed the original warrior known as Ren. And then after Solo joined the Order and denounced the ways of the Jedi, Supreme Leader Snoke gifted the Knights to his new protege, and now the rest is Star Wars history.
Yeah,
so,
basically what they're talking about is the Rise of Kylo Ren comic.
Basically. So they're going to kind of show the Knights of Ren as they were under Ren.
Well, see, I don't know how long before. So The Force Awakens, Kylo's already Kylo. He's in charge of the Knights of Ren. I think that when the Rise of Kylo Ren takes place, it's like 5 or 6 years before that. So now, if you go all the way back to The Mandalorian, that's like 30 years, 24 years maybe,
probably like 20,
or even say 20. I don't think that Ren was in charge of the Knights of Ren. I don't even know if they've been around that long.
It could have been.
The other thing is that, as I pointed out, like some of these, there's a couple of news sources that are a little sketchy that we try to, stay away from. And one of them is that one that came from We Got It Covered or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're notorious for like making stuff up. And just take that with a grain of salt. I don't know, but one of the reasons why this is intriguing is, do you think that they should be in there though?
No.
All right, what's it?
I mean, I'm just saying, like, for what? I mean, like, I really don't. I mean, I guess you can show them maybe in an episode or something like that. Like maybe the Mandalorian had to, go through these guys at one point or something. I
agree with you on this.
But I mean, I'm just saying. Like,
nope, don't even sandwich it in because stick with your no.
No, I mean, I still am going to stick with my no. I'm just saying, like, if you had to show them, that would probably be the only way to show them. But I mean, my thing is, I don't see the point of it because it's like, well, what? Like, we know them associated with Kylo Ren, and we don't care what the guy Ren for what?
Well, Ren is actually pretty cool, but this kind of goes into your thing, is that what I think they should do is just make an animated series, not that goes for 5 seasons or something, but even a movie out of the rise of Kylo Ren. It's like if you really want to show leading up to that, maybe do a 1-season Knights of Ren animated series, or maybe do like an hour-and-a-half animated film and make it about the Knights of Ren.
Yeah, I mean,
leading into, Kylo taking it over. I think that they should keep it out of the Mandalorian.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it belongs in Mandalorian because that's what I'm saying, to serve what purpose. I don't think we need to see them in that light. Like I said, we came to know them through Kylo. So I would rather see it closer to a Kylo situation as opposed to like, oh, well, this is when the Knights of Ren first started. Now it's like almost like a little baby origin story, which we don't need. Exactly. Reynaldo has a good thing. Do you think the female series that will be coming to Disney Plus is about Dr. Aphra? That's a really intriguing thought. That is. We don't actually know that much about this, do we? No. Other than it's rumored. It still hasn't been officially like. Yeah, but even in the rumors though, is it like, was it a group? Like a Charlie's Angels kind of thing, or I mean, No, I mean, I think it's I just know they did try to do something with the all-female cast. That's pretty much what. That's true. They just said all-female cast, and that's a good point. Almost like a Wonder Woman type. Right, thing. And Dr. Aphra. Look, I mean, I don't know all you guys out there if you've ever read any of the Dr. Aphra comics, or she actually appeared in a lot of the Darth Vader ones too. She's a great character. She's kind of like a female Indiana Jones type of thing, but yet. I mean, I guess that's probably the best way to compare her. But she's a really cool character, though. And, I mean, she's had her own comic series that, for a while. Has gone on for, ever. Yeah. I think it's still going, actually. Mm-hmm. If it isn't, it's... I haven't delved into her, but... I have a couple of her comics. I've seen every time they be like, another Dr. Aphra thing. And it's like, I've always said one day I'm just... Oh, you really should, man. If you haven't ever delved into any of her stuff. Yeah. Well, you've read the Vader stuff with her in it. Yeah, I've seen a couple of the comics with her in it, but it's more like, I mean, I know she's kind of gets these artifacts and so I mean, I kind of have like a vague loose thing about her. But it's funny because when you just like describe the thing or whatever, it's like it sounds like it's all right. But when you actually get into the character, though, it's really hard to describe the comics, honestly, because they go in a bunch of really weird directions. Like, she'll be hunting for artifacts or whatever, but then she gets involved in, like, some, crazy... Yeah, exactly. Because she gets involved, like, with the Empire, and the Emperor, like, starts to pit her up against... or she's, like, spying, or she's doing something. It's sort of like half archaeology, half espionage. And it's pretty cool, the situations. Like Tomb Raider type vibe or something. Yeah, that's actually not a bad way to describe it.
I mean, I don't know. I think that that's a good point, though. I never really thought about the Dr. Aphra angle. Sadly, knowing that Kathleen Kennedy doesn't seem to be up on, a lot of these characters, especially she doesn't seem to be all that knowledgeable or care that much about people that are in the I won't say expanded universe, the new canon novels, comics, stuff like that. But I, for one, would love Dr. Aphra. Mm-hmm. I mean, actually, now, if you told me, first of all, I'd be up for the whole female-led series anyway. I think that that's kind of a cool idea. Mm-hmm. But if you told me it was Dr. Aphra, I'd be all about it then. Like, I'd be totally into it at that point. But again, this is where I think that Lucasfilm really needs to start to not just plan as far as a trilogy, right? Which is what we talked about with the sequel trilogy. Like, okay, obviously they didn't have a plan. They didn't have a story arc and then divide it up between the directors and have a meeting, right? They just kind of like, okay, you got the next one, take it wherever you want, and then the next guy will pick it up. But the problem is, and this is something the White Elephant brought up a while ago, is that it's going to start to screw with the continuity of stuff. If you don't, I'm not saying you have to have some grand master plan, but at least if you take a character and say, okay, where do we want to go with this character? Where do we want this character to interact with some of the other ones? If you're going to do, like, say, this Dr. Aphra thing, where do we want that character to go? Do we want her to show up in any other series and do this whole, like, cross... I keep wanting to say cross-platform, but...
Yeah, like cross...
I know there's, like, a term for it for television, where they appear in each other's series and stuff,
yeah.
But... like they crossover episodes. Mm-hmm. I think that's just the term. If you're going to start doing crossover type stuff, where are you going to do it? At what point in the character's development? These are the things that you actually have to look at. And this is what I'm afraid. Now, with Filoni and Favreau, I'm not afraid at all. But depending on who these showrunners are, because, don't forget, we still got things like Obi-Wan, the Cassian Andor series. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other things that are out there. And don't forget, we don't know what movies are coming out with in the next couple of years. There's still one that's slated for like 2022 or something.
Yeah.
And then again in 24 and 26. And it's like, well, we've heard nothing about that. We don't even know what era they're taking place. So if you're going to do these things, they need to really spend the time to look, plan this stuff out, figure out your story arcs, figure out if there's any crossover in there, kind of like what they're doing with the High Republic, which is yet another thing. How's that going to affect all this stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that there's a lot that they have to basically look at before they can, just start making all these weird decisions.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and it's always been about making sure that you have the clear vision. And like we said, that's what made Marvel so well done, is the fact that they knew they released things in phases. Okay, phase 1, this is what comes in phase 1, this is how we end phase 1, and then we pick up phase 2 right here, this is how we end phase 2, so on and so forth until we get to Endgame. And then it's like, okay, that's one complete section. Now we can move past that. Okay, and I'm assuming they're gonna do the same thing the next go around. So,
well,
I'm not saying, I know Star Wars, you can't do it necessarily.
Oh man, yeah, you knew where I was going with that
one. I know you can't.
It's like, stop. I get it.
We can't do the phase thing, but what I'm saying is more or less of that type of planning, as far as like, okay,
right,
how is this world going to interact with each other, and who can come in it, who can't, how are we going to do, like you said, crossover episodes, because you got to have the differentiation now between movies and television, now the big and the small screen, because all right, are they going to like start on the big screen and go to small, so start small and go big? How are we going to do it? Or they're not even going to do either one, they're just going to live here and live there? We don't know. So I just think that all that stuff, all the logistics of everything needs to kind of be fleshed out, and then they can start like, okay, well, what makes the most sense to make at this juncture right now?
Yeah, especially because you have to think about it this way. You are asking fans to dedicate a certain amount of time
and money
to a lot of these different either TV series, films, books, whatever. And you're going to lose a lot of these fans if you just start, you're not really thinking about it. Yeah. And Star Wars already, unfortunately, now has a tarnished image. I never thought in a million years that I would ever say that.
Yeah.
And this has all happened in the last 2 or 3 years. And obviously, Disney has mishandled a lot of elements of it. I mean, there's some things that they did that were really cool, don't get me wrong, but it's overall, though, they've totally mishandled a lot of situations. It didn't have to be like this. And so now I think moving forward, they have to have a definitive plan. They have to, if you're going to ask fans to invest a certain amount of time and money, then you have to at least give the fans somewhat of a complete and satisfying experience.
Yeah, you just got to respect the fans enough to give them quality.
Yeah, that's basically it. Because, look, not everybody's going to agree with everything.
Right.
Like, for instance, I love the Dr. Aphra character. I love Ahsoka, too. Mm-hmm. There may be a lot of people that would hate both of those. And so, therefore, anything that involved them, they might not be interested in. Okay, that's cool. But the problem with the fans today is that if there's something that they don't like, they instantly just want to bash it. They want to start, using social media to tweet out or whatever, just all this vitriol and hatred and everything, and actually suck away other fans' enjoyment of it versus just going, okay, look, this isn't for me. I'll catch the next one.
Right. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. I think that's just one of those things where when you look at franchises, yeah, and that's why I think that's why we wanted to have these different type of theme Star Wars shows, because in that way it's something for everybody. So it's like, okay, if you're not down with, the Dr. Aphra thing, okay, but maybe political dramas are your thing. Okay, we got Bloodline over here. If you're not into the whole political thing and you really don't want to do the whole, I Am Women vibe with, Dr. Aphra and Ahsoka, then we have, the High Republic over here for you.
Or Obi-Wan.
Or Cassian. Or
any of these people.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy.
All right. All right, well, I think it's time to do battle. Even though we've done a little bit of battle today.
Yes. A little warm-up.
All right, so what do we got next?
Next, we have Duel of the Fates.
All right, what do we got on Duel of the Fates?
All right, well, this week I'm going to ask the question, who would you rather work for, Crimson Dawn or the Hutts?
That's a tough... I say this every week, but it's true. This is a tough one. Because on one hand, the Hutts are a little bit ruthless. You make a mistake. Well, really, it's true too. Dryden Voss was not playing.
No,
actually, I think that he was even worse than Jabba in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Jabba at least kind of had a little bit of a heart.
Yeah, especially when it came to, what was it, Stinky the Hutt or something?
It's Buki.
Oh, that was so stupid. That right there. I mean, not to get off on another tangent, but that was another thing that I really wasn't too down with on the whole Clone Wars thing at first.
Yeah.
Was they gave Jabba a kid and he was his little Pookie or whatever, and it's like, oh, come on, dude. You just single-handedly ruined one of the greatest characters and just made it stupid. That aside, I'm going to go with the Hutts.
I'm going Crimson Dawn.
Ooh, finally.
Yes.
All right, why Crimson Dawn?
Crimson Dawn for me, I think is cool because, as we said, Drayden was just not for the games. I love the organized vibe that they had. This is how they moved. They were very ruthless, but it was very kind of almost like almost like a mob type thing, but in a different kind of way. I'm trying to think of, it was more. they were more Scarface versus Jabba's more Godfather. If that makes sense.
That makes sense.
So I think like the whole Scarface thing was not because Drayden had all those scars on his face, but like it was just more of that kind of vibe. And then the fact that you just got Maul back there, like he's kind of like the one pulling the strings. And I just loved just to see what it would just be like to serve under somebody like Maul, because contrary to popular belief, like when you look at the Phantom Menace, you kind of look at Maul as just a tool of death and destruction, really. But then you really as you start to look at the Clone Wars, if you start looking at Rebels, you start to see like, man, like this guy is actually really intelligent. Like he's actually smart. He's actually calculated. It's just that sometimes his emotion gets ahead of him, and he never can let that go enough so he could actually be on top.
No, that's true.
He has a lot of that in him, and I just kind of like and quite frankly, like there's just the only thing about the Hutts is that like the Hutts don't scare me. It's the fact that they have so much money and political pull with other people who could kill you versus like they themselves. Like I'm not worried about no giant slug. I mean, he couldn't even catch me. You know what I'm saying? If I decide to run. But he has everybody working for him across the galaxy where he could just make one well-placed phone call and, I'm got a bounty hunter like sitting outside my doorway or something like that. So in that way, Jabba's reach is very long. Like he can dispatch people at a moment's notice. So on that side, he's powerful. But like just him as a person, I wouldn't fear. Crimson Dawn, I would fear both sides because they actually are formidable fighters, as we saw in Solo, both with Drayden and like Kiera. She was no joke either. And then you still got Maul. We all know what Maul can do. So yeah, Crimson Dawn for me.
All right. Well, I mean, for me, and I get that, and that's part of the problem why I'm going with the Hutts, though, because it's almost like with Crimson Dawn, if you make one mistake, you're gone. And it may not even be your fault. Jabba, at least, I know the Hutts basically have more than, there's different Hutts controlled different, but by and large, Jabba was sort of like the king of the Hutt crime family or whatever. Mm-hmm. And basically everybody was under him. You had other Hutts controlling different regions, right, but essentially Jabba was sort of like the top of the pyramid.
Yeah, he's the Godfather.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about him is that you could reason with him. I mean, sure, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but I mean, that's true with any crime lord, though, it's like, I mean, if you're talking about crime, it's sort of like, yeah, failure. It's not like you just, we're going to fill out a little form and, put you through some. I mean, if you mess up too bad, it's just like you're gone. But number one, with the Hutts, it was almost more like you were freelancing. With Crimson Dawn, it's kind of like if you were a part of them, you couldn't just leave.
Yeah, Crimson Dawn was more like a gang, if you would like.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, that's my point. It's like it's more like a gang, but it's a lot more ruthless. And it's like nobody, with the Hutts, you had all those bounty hunters. Of course, everybody was in competition with each other, but there was, I don't know, it was almost like a family vibe to it in a way. Everybody was celebrating in Jabba's palace, there's party music going on. I mean, it just seemed like it was a more fun, I know this is kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's even saying it's kind of weird, but I mean, it just seemed like you had a little bit more freedom, and you were almost more like a freelancer. Whereas with Crimson Dawn, you were basically like you signed away your life in a contract or something, and you couldn't just break away from them. And these are the reasons why I think that I would probably rather go with the Hutts because there's just, but then again, it's kind of like what you brought up. I mean, there's two totally different styles of organized crime.
Yeah, I mean, you have like gang versus mob, and I think that's kind of basically what you're like pretty much looking at there. But I mean, when you look at Crimson Dawn, I mean, like I said, there was a certain level of polish to them too, though.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like when you look at,
They're way more organized.
Yeah, they're way more organized. They're polished. They enjoy the finer things of life. I mean, his whole ship was pretty sweet. They had food and stuff all laid out.
Yeah, Jabba's barge.
I mean, Jabba's barge, but it's just like, you got a bunch of weirdos. I mean, you had some weirdos on Drayden's thing too, but
Yeah, let's be honest now.
yeah, but I mean, it's just, I don't know. I think that now, the only thing is that I would rather, if I screwed up, I would rather take my chances in Crimson Dawn.
Really?
For the simple fact of this, it's like, okay, if I screwed up, you send some of your little goons or henchmen after me. Okay, I see you coming. I see who you are. All right, it's mano, man on man. Cool. But with Jabba, he got me in a Sarlacc pit. I mean, he was just kind of like torture. I mean, it's like, okay, this is just like, all right, man up. Versus this, now I'm here for his entertainment. It's like, oh, okay, let me just take you to the Sarlacc pit, and then, all right, you got any last words? All right, push him in. Now I got to be digested for like 10,000 years or whatever it is. It's just like, that kind of sucks. Or you drop me down this whole Rancor thing that I have no chance and no hope of defending myself from. It's like, okay, but at least with Crimson Dawn, I kind of have a fighting chance in this thing.
Well, I don't know. It depends on how you look at things. Because if you look at a lot of the Solo stuff, granted, they were able to reason with him. But don't forget, you got Darth Maul as the ultimate head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think, once again, with Maul, though, once again, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die a man's death.
Well, yeah, Maul's not going to, yeah. I mean, that's true.
I could die that way.
Well, he might force choke you too, though.
That's true, but it's still a manly death. I mean, it's like, dude, I got.
Well, dude, being digested by a creature is pretty manly, though.
No,
I mean,
it's like being digested sucks.
Oh well, no, I mean, especially for 10,000 years,
Exactly.
I'm sure it does. I mean, I'm sure it's very painful.
Yeah, it's like.
In fact, I think 3PO pointed that out.
It's like slowly. It's not even just your digest, like your.
But that's a man's death, though.
No, because it's like it's like the.
No, dying from a hemorrhage because you tripped and fell, that's stupid. But like throwing yourself on a grenade.
Yeah. Man's death.
Yeah, well.
Exactly. I don't want to. Now, I mean, I will say if it was like a Rancor situation, okay, that's kind of a manly thing. Like, especially if you beat the stupid thing. All right, you definitely got your man points on that one. But I just feel like, all right.
Is it because of the lack of control? Is that what it is? Is that the reason why the Sarlacc thing's not a man's death?
Yeah.
Because that's a pretty manly thing, dude. I mean, that thing is... I get it. It's like you don't have the control. You're being shoved in. It's not like you're fighting the thing.
Yeah, you can't, there's no chance of, I feel like there's no, in the words of Worth, there's no honor in that. Like, you just...
There could be, though, because... The special edition version, you at least have some tentacles that you can grab on and battle with. The original, yeah, there was nothing. It was just a hole with spikes.
Yeah. But, I mean, I still feel like Crimson Dawn, I feel like you can kind of reason with people if you're good. And I think that's the thing. It's like if you're good at what you do. And I think that's on both sides. Because, Jabba spared Han a lot of times just because he was one of the best smugglers he had.
Well, and I think that's true with any of the organizations.
Yeah,
is that if you're
give you some latitude, especially if you do well.
If you're good and you do well, they'll give you a little bit.
Cross them. Yeah, you're good with us.
Very little latitude. Yeah, I mean it's. But what I look at is more the mistakes, because there were some things that could not be avoided. I mean, when Beckett, when he came back, or Beckett, yeah, and it was,
yeah,
I was close.
You're close.
I was close. So when Beckett came back, I mean, yes, Han was able to step up and they were able to reason with him a little bit, but still, it was, these were things that were beyond his control. I thought he was being a little unreasonable. Now, who knows how the Hutts would have reacted too? Could have been a trip to the Sarlacc pit for them too. And honestly, the Sarlacc pit freaks me out.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
No, I don't want to.
Just like
That's what I'm
walking
saying.
out in the desert, on Earth or something, and all of a sudden there's this giant pit with spikes, and it's
the thing
actually a creature.
Yeah, it's like the size of a football field.
Yeah, it's insane.
And then on top of that, it's like, especially walking around at night, you don't even see the stupid thing. Oh, it's over.
Oh, yeah, man. Can you imagine the Sarlacc pit at night?
That's what I'm saying. You can't see. It's pitch black. And you're just walking. And one of these things
dude,
grab
you just took the whole nightmare thing up to another level
That's
for me.
what I'm saying. Like, that's why I just feel like it's not a... It's not.
Okay, walking in the desert and falling into a Sarlacc pit is not a man's death. That's stupid.
Well, I think
I mean, I'll give you that.
That's what I'm saying. I think the whole Sarlacc pit, I'm not saying it's not. What I mean by man's death is like, okay, you fought to the death. You had a chance. Like the Rancor thing, that's a man's death to me. Because it's like man versus beast type situation. You know, you got some rocks in here. You got to figure out a strategy. Hey, Luke did. And that's what I'm saying. That's what made Luke. Luke did it without the Force and the lightsaber.
I still don't understand why he didn't use the Force.
I know. But I mean, at least...
That to me is just so stupid. It's like, dude, you had you're obviously well attuned. You're Force choking,
Mandalorian guard.
Yeah, it's like... Really?
And
you're not going to use
anything?
anything?
Hide the fact that he was a Jedi because he
basically announced
Skywalker Jedi Knight.
Right.
So
and then they're all like, Bib Fortuna's all like, he's no Jedi and all this stuff. It's like, no, dude, you force push or force choke the Rancor or use the Force to blow his heart out or something like that. That's going to show him, yeah, I'm a Jedi. You guys need to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if he had done that, I think that maybe Jabba would have.
Like, all right.
Maybe even like, all right, let's negotiate. But instead, he used pretty much what was available to him.
Right.
And he ended up using, I guess, some cunning and a little bit of cleverness or whatever to beat him. Mm-hmm. But that still made no sense to me.
Oh, true. I completely agree.
It's like, come on. I mean, these are the kinds of things that bother me about Star Wars sometimes. It's like, dude, you just used it.
Mm-hmm. On people that probably didn't really need to.
Right. Exactly.
He could have just pushed the Gamorrean guards out of the way. He didn't even need to choke them.
Completely. Once again, these are the kinds of things that bother me. But I mean, I still think that, when you talk about the differences, now I will say this, we know a little bit more about the Hutts than we do Crimson Dawn. Because Crimson Dawn, let's face it, we have one movie, and I think that they were mentioned in some Legends books, because there's also Black Sun. Black Sun is another organization and that's who I thought that they were basing Crimson Dawn on.
Yeah.
But then I read, some other thing later on or whatever that, no, Black Sun is another organization.
It's like Conjure Club, and you got all these other different, factions, but...
Yeah, that's another thing. It's like in Force Awakens, I mean, not that I'm on some sort of a rant today or anything, but in Force Awakens, you have all these, like, cool little different gangs, basically, that are mentioned. It's like, where are they?
Well, they're probably all just doing no different than, like, our buddy, what is his name? The pirate from
Hondo.
Yeah. So like,
But see, these are the things that I would like to see featured more in a lot of these different things. You don't have to be so incestuous about.
Oh, nice one.
I know. About the whole Star Wars thing,
Like to your point about like we were talking about the Sarlacc pit though. It's kind of like those raptors, flying around like all.
Oh yeah.
Like okay, once again, like.
And where are they found?
That was another thing. They're actually used for like some weird form of torture or not torture, but just like.
I was gonna say, dude. I mean, it's over pretty quick. I don't know.
Well, not torture, but like death and stuff like that. Just like no different than Saw Gerrera and that whatever that.
Oh, some gullet.
Bocalet or whatever that thing was. So that's what I'm saying.
That thing, dude. If I saw that thing coming at me.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, see, those to me.
Or gullet.
Yeah,
that's it.
Like I can't. Once again, like I don't have a fighting chance. If you give me a fighting chance against something, then that's a man's death to me. But it's like when you just kind of just stick me in something that I can't even deal with. It's like, well, that sucks.
So then the arena scene in Attack of the Clones. Oh, man's death.
Definitely
man's death.
Definitely. I mean, look at this. It's like a gladiator arena. I mean, that's perfectly screams.
Kind of like, I think that we could say that's the ground zero of a man's death. That's kind of like that. That's our foundation. That's our
our base.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
And that's another thing, like a lot of those creatures, dude. Those things were like freaky. It's like if you really stop and think about all the freaky creatures, well, there goes my phone, that we have in the whole Star Wars universe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't focus too much on that, but we've actually been introduced to some pretty freaky things. Those things in Attack of the Clones.
Mm-hmm. The one that looked like a giant like grasshopper, and then or praying mantis.
Yeah.
And then that weird cheetah Cheshire cat looking thing,
right?
That scratched the crap.
That's the thing that freaks me out.
That thing should have killed. I'm about to say panda bear, Padme. But
yeah, totally.
That little scratch. No, that thing should have ripped her. Body
man. Yeah, like her back should have just been
gone.
Like. I mean,
it shouldn't have even been a Padme.
I will say though, man, that scream that she let out was epic.
Oh, was.
That's hands down one of the best like female I'm in pain screams ever.
I know. I think she screamed louder than that when she gave birth to Luke. Understandably so.
But I mean, the thing about it too is that, you know, you had the big fish in Phantom Menace.
Oh yeah, all of them.
All of them.
Like 3 of them.
Yep. Then you had those creatures in Attack of the Clones. They didn't have anything really freaky in Revenge of the Sith, I don't think. They've had some freaky stuff in well. But I mean, I'm talking, like wildlife, like nature, you know, that kind of thing.
Revenge of the Sith?
I mean, those opera beings were pretty scary.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it just, I don't think they did.
Nope.
You know, and then of course, you had the Dianoga in episode 4.
Episode 4. Yeah, in the trash compactor.
I'm trying to remember if there was anything else freaky.
Well, that was that. You talking about 4 or 5?
Well, at first 4.
Well, 4 the Dianoga, and that's well, some of those. I mean, like the pig dude. Well, he's not a creature though. He's just an actual alien.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'm not counting aliens. I'm only counting the animals.
Yeah, I think that was it. I mean,
or any kind of weird creature.
New Hope.
Yeah.
Empire, you had
the Wampa, and then you still had whatever the heck swallowed R2. Oh yeah. Yeah, you know what? Well, I'm sure it was covered in one of the books or something. Like, remember when I used to have all those, like the Essential Guide to whatever? They had one on creatures, and I think that they actually did say what the name of that thing was, but I don't remember what it was. Well, that was it. That was it for Empire, I think. Oh, and of course the asteroid creature.
The asteroid, yeah, the asteroid.
Whatever that was.
I know.
I mean, see, that's another
like
thing.
A little
it's
baby
like
dinosaur just came out.
Yeah. And I mean, how many of those are there?
I know, right?
I mean, you can't even go into an asteroid field without some. I mean, that thing was huge.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember when I was a kid, that scared the crap out of me.
The fact that it's like, that's why I love. That's why I love that whole line. Whoever wrote that line was just brilliant. Like, the cave is collapsing. This is no cave. Like, and you see, like, there's a bunch of teeth. And then you see, like, it in scale compared to the Millennium Falcon. Like, that's a whole big ship that can be fit in the hangar. And the thing looked like a Tic Tac.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
That's what I'm saying. And then even the Minoc.
Yep.
Those things are kind of freaky.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, Minoc.
Yeah. Which were living in the creature.
Right. Exactly. Where did you even get that from?
Exactly.
But yeah.
And then, of course, you have Return of the Jedi. You have the Rancor.
Sarlacc Pit.
Sarlacc Pit. Still the thing of nightmares.
Yes.
Then, of course, that little rhino thing in The Mandalorian was pretty... thing that almost killed him.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of freaky. That wasn't really scary. That was just menacing.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got that ridiculous serpent in, like, Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, yeah.
The one that Rey was healing. I wouldn't have healed that thing. I would have stabbed it with my
See, and that's another thing, too. I mean, I know these are things that I'm trying not to do the whole, you know what else bothers me kind of thing, but that's a good point.
We should do a show like that.
We should do a show like that.
That'd be hilarious. It's like all the things that we hate about Star Wars.
Yep.
From the biggest fans of the show.
Well, honestly, that's what some of my fans,
Oh, all right. Holding back on it.
Yeah.
Huh? All right.
Some of my friends.
See how he calls what he thinks about
Hey,
you.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, all my friends right now are like, "Oh, really?"
Yep.
But I have one friend in particular that listens to a Star Trek podcast, and one of the things that he loves about it is the fact that they talk about all the things that are stupid about Star Trek. A lot of people love that sort of thing. And I mean, that's one of the things that I want people to understand about us too, is that we're not fanboys. I mean, we point out a lot of the stupid stuff. So you're right, we should actually do a series of shows that are kind of stupid, but we're kind of doing that now. And that's definitely one of them, man. I mean, the whole idea of going up to this, like, yeah, I think I'll heal it. Like, you have no idea what this thing is going to do when you approach it.
Exactly.
I mean, she could say, like, okay, I felt through the Force that it wasn't going to hurt me or whatever, and I think that that's what they were trying to imply.
Or the fact that it was like, okay, it was in pain, it wasn't trying to attack. But once you realize it was injured, it knew it was injured, so it was like, okay, are you about to hurt me and try to kill me or what? But once it healed it was like, oh, well, you're cool. I'll just let you be. And
yeah, and I'll even flip my tail and give you guys a way out.
Yep.
Yet another in the row of conveniences that make up the Rise of Skywalker.
Indeed.
But then, of course, we have Force Awakens. We got to go back. The Wrath... What the heck are they?
Rathars.
Yeah, the Rathars. Among the scariest creatures ever.
Yep.
I mean, I remember when we first were watching that in the theaters, I was like, dude,
Yeah.
why would you capture this?
Yeah. Well, that's...
I mean, how much money are they really paying you that you think that this is a good idea?
Yeah, man.
They didn't have anything on Jakku, did they?
Well, Ray did mention, like, the sand monsters or something like that. It was like...
Yeah, that's true. She did. She said something.
She wanted BB-8 about him, like...
And then The Last Jedi. You know, it's weird. I don't think they... Yeah.
I don't think they had anything.
They didn't have a single scary creature. And see, another thing.
Yeah.
What?
Rian Johnson's script. So anyway...
Sorry, now I'm going to get nightmares. And that is a recap of all the freaky creatures.
Right. It's our own sub-segment.
It's our own subsegment. Well, that's what I love about these live shows is that, you know, when the chats come in and we just start talking about anything at this point.
I know, start venturing off.
But again, I think that my original point, like 20 minutes ago, was the fact that there's not a whole lot known about Crimson Dawn.
Right.
And I think that that's why in some cases it's somewhat unfair, because I think a lot of reasons why I would say the Hutts is because I just know more about them.
Yeah,
I feel more comfortable with it. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why kind of one of the reasons too I like about Crimson Dawn too is like they're not as well known, but they're every bit as vicious, and you know they have, when you realize who's actually at the helm of them, that even makes it more intriguing for me.
Yeah. I have to admit, and honestly, that made me really excited for a Solo 2. When they actually introduced Maul as like the head of this, first of all, I did not see that coming.
No way.
I was so blown away by that. I'm like, no way.
We were in the theater, it's like, no.
Yeah. That was a well-kept secret.
Yeah, it was.
Because I don't even think that was in the rumor mill.
Nope. I think they kept that one tight to the vest.
See, and this is what people are thinking that's happening with Mandalorian Season 2.
About what?
Well, there's been speculation that, you know, they're releasing all this information about Season 2. Somebody, I don't remember where I read this, but somebody has a theory that they're doing that because they're actually hiding a big secret. And by giving away all these little ones,
it gives you something to focus on.
yeah, and there's so many of it that you're not even looking anymore. You figure, oh, okay, they're just not going to be that secretive about this. Because if you think about it, Season 1 we knew almost nothing about.
Right.
And they really held that close to the vest, too.
The
I mean,
Baby Yoda thing, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Baby Yoda thing was the big secret. And that was the thing. You know, you got a little bit of, look, it's an IG-88 look-alike. And, you know, there was like little things that they would tell us. But by and large, though, they kept most of Season 1 under wraps. And then, of course, when the Baby Yoda thing hit, it exploded.
Yep.
And so a lot of people are theorizing that they're telling us all this information about season 2, or it's leaking out and Disney's not either doing anything to stop it, nor are they denying it, because there's some, like, epic secret that they're
trying to roll out.
Yeah, that they're trying to roll out. So, I mean, it would be really interesting. I mean, do you think that that could be the case, or?
Yeah, it's highly possible. I mean, I don't know what else they're going to add to this growing list.
Right?
But hey, I mean,
it's kind of like, well, what?
If you got the room, man, I guess go for it.
You know what the biggest secret that they're holding is? How long each episode is.
Yeah, you tell me.
Because it's like, guys, I mean, really? But all right, I think it's time to move on to our next segment, which is
From a Certain Point of View.
All right, so this is our main topic. So when you guys all saw the title of this show and you clicked on it because you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, this is it. 2 hours later. Here we are. Pretty much at our main topic, which is, and this is really interesting, 5 story concepts that either could be or should be the next movies.
Yeah. So I was coming through the internet and I kind of stumbled upon these things, and I thought this was pretty cool. And then, you know, some of the things on here we've mentioned before that we thought would be really good story topics for Star Wars. And then there may be some in here that we have not discussed.
Well, before you get to that, Ronaldo has a cool comment. He's like, could you imagine if Baby Yoda dies in the series?
Oh.
The rage would be massive.
Yeah, the heartbreak.
Yeah. I never even thought about that. But he has a point. I mean, that could be a huge secret. Because him dying would make sense. Now, I don't know if that would happen in season 2. You know, season 2 might be a little early for that.
Yeah, I mean...
Because what did they say? Like, they were going to try to go like 4 or 5 seasons or something?
Yeah, about 5.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can't kill off Baby Yoda in the 2nd season. That would be insane.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do it, it'd probably be 3.
Yeah. But that's a very intriguing idea, because that would be one worth doing. And so that, of course, well, it doesn't, but I'm going to say it does. That brings us to our next thing, which is these 5 story concepts. So you're going to read through these different story concepts.
Yeah.
And hey, guys, feel free. I know some of you guys are watching, listening, whatever. Start chatting. Talk about it with us. You know, see what you guys are thinking of these story ideas. So basically the idea is, do you want to see these made into movies or a TV series, or don't you? We're going to tell you what we think. We want to know what you think. What's the first one?
Origins of the Jedi.
I actually wanted this a lot more, like maybe a decade or 2 ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that in some cases, this could actually be cool, because if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that what the Benioff and Weiss movie was going to be about? The whole origins of this Jedi and Sith and everything?
Yeah, it could have been. I think it was, you know, we've already talked about, you know, the Prime Jedi type situation, and, you know, we've already even talked about the origins of the Force. So I think this is definitely high on my list. I would love to see the origin of the Jedi, because I think, you know, there's so many different nuances to that episode. How did you come up with the whole format of, like, okay, these are light side abilities, here's how you keep yourself from the dark side, lightsabers, just all of that, like, just where did all this come from?
Well, and, you know, by the same token, okay, the Force was always around. Who was the first guy that was able to tap into it, and how did they do that?
Yeah. And
you know,
what I'm saying, yeah, all that. Like, I think that's where the whole Prime Jedi thing kind of comes from, because he was the first Jedi to kind of like, all right, master both light and dark, and, you know, just, okay, well, who some people kind of, I think people kind of trained in both, and then they kind of realized, well, I kind of like the light better, and then that's kind of how the Jedi kind of broke off into their own thing, and then eventually those who kind of felt more of the dark side stuff, then the Sith popped up, and so it's just kind of like, I would love to see just those origins, and just kind of see how they had to kind of form up and create the whole framework of their whole religion.
Well, and I think that a lot of it too comes from that one Clone Wars episode with the father and the son and the Mortis.
Yep, you had the daughter.
Yeah, the daughter,
and the son was dark.
Mm-hmm. And then the father was kind of keeping them both in balance, and then he wanted Anakin to do it. They could do something like that, I think, because that has to be, if not where the Force originated from, somewhere early in the whole history of the Force, something had to have happened there, because those guys were basically the embodiment of the light and the dark.
Yeah.
So I think they could do something like that. They could. It's really tough to say, because if you go back too far like that and you define it too much, I think it takes away some of the mystery. And it's almost like if you're trying to explain everything,
well, I think it's,
they fall into a trap. They could paint themselves into a corner.
Well, that's why I say I think you have to give it enough. You have to give it its due without oversaturating it. I think you have to give enough where it's tasteful, it's flavorful to people, it's palpable, people can understand it, and it's like, all right, I get this, as opposed to every single nuance. And I think that's, you have to almost put yourself in the space of a Jedi, where even Yoda's always saying, like, okay, even at his age, like, he's still learning about the Force. So it's always changing. It's also so you can't contain it.
Well, so I don't know. Do you think it's really changing, or do you think it's just the fact that because they haven't mastered, I mean, you can't possibly master everything, right? So it's sort of like, and through your own experiences and your own journey, I guess, you're looking at things a different way. So, like, maybe something happened to you at like 20. I mean, obviously for somebody like Yoda, these ages are relative, but just speaking in humanoid terms, something happens at 20, okay, you have an understanding. At 30 or 40, you might have a completely different understanding of the Force at that point. Or there was something that you either read or knew or whatever, but now it has a different meaning to you, and then that leads to unlocking other stuff.
True. And I think that's what I'm saying, like, I think that's what makes the whole origins of the Jedi. I think what thing cool is that you can just talk about the Jedi as far as like, okay, how did we establish, and I think it's more, that's what it is, it's more so establishing the religion that, okay, use it for knowledge, not in defense, never for attack. Where did that come from?
Right.
Where did, okay, as far as meditating on the Force, like who was the first person to use Force healing? How did you, and who's writing this stuff down? I'm just like,
right, like who wrote the Jedi text, for instance?
That's what I'm saying. Like, okay, and then, all right, I've noticed here that this blah blah blah. These species are like, okay, if you have a species that's a little bit more, almost like dogs, shall we say, but pit bull is a little bit more aggressive in nature. Simply by nature. So, but if they have the Force and you want them to train them as a Jedi, they're going to have to overcome that anger side. How do you manage that, without them going to the dark side, because they're more...
Well,
so, you have these...
Look at the creator of the Darksaber, right? That was a Mandalorian. He was the first Mandalorian Jedi.
Yep, he sat on the council, yeah.
Yeah,
yep.
And it was, he basically used like his own culture or whatever and created sort of this weird version of a lightsaber. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Ronaldo actually says, I think an origin story of the Jedi and the Sith could help to explain how balance in the Force actually works.
It would, definitely.
Man, and you remember that show that you and I did.
Yeah, about
where that whole thing was nothing I mean, the main topic was pretty much how the Force works, and
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
and like what it is. And I remember that got really deep, actually. Like,
Well, yeah, because I mean, to me, that's, and I've always been, I've been telling people lately, just even in the, like I said, the times right now where we're looking at our country and civil unrest, people are asking me all the time, do you protest? Do you riot? Do you do one or the other? Or do you do both? How do you do both if you're going to do it? Like, does one cancel out the other? Does one come from a different place than another? Like, so there's constant things, and I'm always preaching people, like, I think balance in itself that's how you're supposed to live. You have to try to always balance things out, and sometimes when things get out of balance in your life, you have to find a way to shift it in another direction to kind of keep that balance. And I think that's what makes the Force so intriguing, is because a lot of people, when they go to the dark side, and we've talked about this, everybody looks at the dark side as bad. And it's just like, no, it's no different than cake or sugar or pies. Like, they're not bad. It's just if you have too much of them, it can become a bad
or if
thing.
you're consumed by them. I mean, I think
exactly, and that's what I mean by, like, if you're consumed by, well, that's all that you want. Well, now you're living a life that's unhealthy. But there's nothing wrong with having dessert. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just in moderation. So if you're going to use the dark side, use it in moderation. But then some people, we know people in our own everyday lives who are like, okay, they're too optimistic, and it's like, that's also unhealthy too, because you fail to see.
Well, it's the dynamic between the optimist, the pessimist, and then the realist.
Exactly. And the realist is usually the one
that sees both sides.
And
exactly.
that's the balance.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying.
And they might not necessarily lean towards one or the other. It's like they'll look at the situation. If the situation... Now, you could be what I would call an optimistic realist or a pessimistic realist. You know, you can...
Lean towards
you lean towards one of the sides, but ultimately, you're going to look at what's actually there. And maybe a movie that explores the balance of the Force wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, because it would...
I would eat that up, man, because I love philosophical, like, conversations and things like that, which is one of the reasons, like, this Sunday, shameless plug, but this Sunday, they're on
Sunday
on ESPN, they're doing the 30 for 30 on Bruce Lee. And, he's one of my biggest heroes, not
really?
Just because of the martial arts, although that was cool, but I really, like, fell in love with his philosophies. Just the whole be water, my friend thing, or, don't concentrate on the moment. It's just so many things that he has.
You know what? It was his attitude toward the martial arts and how and when to use it. And,
yeah.
I mean, he basically...
Adaptation. It's more like, don't get stuck. And that's kind of like what the Jedi were. They were so, and that's what even Palpatine was kind of saying, like, the Jedi are so dogmatic in their ways. And even Luke said, it's like, we were so rigid in this particular way that we couldn't see beyond. And that became our arrogance, because we were so dogmatic and our way is the best way. And that's how you lose your grip sometimes on those students who eventually venture off to the dark side, because you're holding on to them too tight.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's almost like if you get a parent, they're either, if they're not strict enough, or if they're too strict. If they're too strict, it's kind of like once the kid goes off in the world, they're going to rebel. They're going to do all kinds of things because you were just so oppressive.
Yeah, like Leia said, the more you tighten your grip, the more systems will slip through your fingers.
Yeah, and that was the Empire's undoing, totally.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think that I think one of the things that a movie that talks about the balance of the Force would do is actually give it some ground rules.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Because on one hand, you had Lucas try to give more of a scientific spin on it.
Yeah, with the midichlorian.
With the whole midichlorian thing. And it's like, no, not really. I mean, that's why I always go back to Obi-Wan's whole speech in Episode 4. When he's explaining it to Luke. Mm-hmm. It's very simple. It's not complicated. It's easy to adhere to, but I think what happens is that as time goes on and people are trying to make more movies or whatever, people are like trying to get too defined, I guess, rather than let it be this sort of vague blanket type of a thing. Mm-hmm. And you could still have some cool stories within that. Like, you always point out, there was that novel where Mace was talking about using the dark side a little bit at times to amplify his powers in certain situations. There's a lot of period. I mean, if you guys are a fan of dark side leaning Mace, read Dark Disciple, because Mace is almost a bad guy. And one of the things that I love about that book is it really shows how the Jedi, in thinking that they were doing the right thing, were actually in some ways the villains of the story. And that's where Mace embodies that, because he was just so wanting to get Dooku, and end these guys. It was a noble thing, but he was sort of going about it in kind of an evil type of way that, everybody else is like, well, that's not really what Jedi do, though. So yeah, I mean, I just think that would, if you do an Origin of the Jedi movie and in that movie you talk about the balance of the Force and establish some ground rules that people can then go back to, yeah, I think that would be a good thing.
Yep.
All right, that's number one.
Now on the other one, it's the opposite. Darth Bane in The Rule of Two.
Yes. Now, this is something I've been wanting to see. Now, even though I haven't read the books yet, and I feel really, really bad that I haven't, because you had the whole Darth Plagueis thing, you had the Darth Bane books, especially the Darth Bane ones. And what's interesting about the whole Darth Bane thing is that was an expanded universe character, an expanded universe books. And then what happened was, somewhere along the way, Disney actually made them canon, made the character of Darth Bane canon. Well, actually, no, Lucas did in the Clone Wars series. In the Clone Wars, they ended up mentioning Bane, and I think like the Spirit of Bane or something visited the temple. Remember that episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that ended up making Darth Bane canon.
Yep.
Because the Clone Wars is canon, which, of course, carried over into the whole Disney thing. So now you have a situation to where you could make, whether or not they just cherry pick from the books, or just, we're going to make movies out of the books, which I really wish that at some point they would just do that.
Yeah.
You and I talk about this all the time. It's like they have all these really cool books. Just make a movie out of one of them.
Yeah.
They
absolutely
do it all the time. Why can't you? Right. Jaws.
Yep.
The Jurassic Park.
Lord of the Rings. You got all these.
Narnia, all kinds of examples that we can go on for hours citing. Why not do that with the whole Star Wars thing?
Absolutely.
So
I think Darth Bane would be cool. I think that's and that would be, for those who want to see like something dark, there you go.
Well, that's another thing, because something else that we've been missing all this time is a dark side themed movie.
Well, yeah, man. I think people are also curious about, as much as curious as they are about Jedi, they're curious about the Sith.
Well, I think they're more curious because we've never seen an instance where a Sith was training another Sith. One. And then two is like, we're used to seeing Jedi councils and, the Jedi masters, but it's like, okay, we've never, like you said, we've never seen Palpatine train anybody person. We've seen little bits of it, but like in animations, but like to really sit him down and like, okay, how to use your anger, how to use your, follow your passions. How are they tested? Like, what is there a progression? Like, do you go from a Padawan to a Dark Lord to then a Sith, or like, right?
Like, or is it just you automatically? Is it like, at what point do you become a Sith?
From everything that I've read, as again, particularly in Lords of the Sith, I love that book because it really goes into that stuff. It really goes heavily into Palpatine training Vader.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, in book form, that's...
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I'm saying, though. People actually want to see that. I think that's actually one of the better selling books, and I think that just shows that, people would like to see this in a movie. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, I think maybe now they could start to do it, but, before, since they were only releasing movies every couple of years or whatever, it's like, okay, if you're ever going to go back to that whole one movie a year thing, you can afford to, do that, because it's not like you're wasting your one movie release on something that maybe wouldn't appeal to everybody, and then you got to wait another 2 or 3 years for it.
See, what I would do if I were at Lucasfilm, honestly, what I would probably do is like come up with an original, like either I would do original. I would keep the movies original, like the High Republic, something like that, like all original stuff.
Yeah, you mean just kind of like news stories, advancing the lore and all that stuff.
Exactly. Disney Plus, the books into TV shows.
Yeah.
See, that would be cool.
That would be cool.
Because then now you have the time, because books are, more fleshed out, but you can't do that in a movie because you have the time constraint. But see, with the TV show, you can stretch that out over a season. So it's like, okay, if you want to cover, let's say, Lures of the Sith and make that like a legitimate TV show, well, that can go on for 5 seasons until this person grows to become a Sith. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, you could
actually do it that way. And I think that way you can accomplish,
Well, I mean, the Disney Plus thing definitely opens up doors, because you have either like what you're talking about, where it's a series that goes for a few seasons. You could do a limited series. Mm-hmm. You can do a movie, but like a movie that premieres on no different than all these Netflix and Prime movies.
Right.
Or you could do an animated movie.
Mm-hmm.
So Ronaldo says maybe a Darth Bane story could explore how the Sith are born from the ranks of the Jedi.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Exactly.
Like a sort of like, and are they dark Jedi or are they Sith?
Well, see, what will be cool, and that's a great point, Ronaldo, because that's how they started. And so what would be cool is if you showed a origin story of the Jedi and leave it as a cliffhanger as like the first Jedi who left, or the Jedi who left the Order. Then the sequel to that is the other side, where you see like, okay, now the Sith started.
Yeah, or why not follow a specific one? Like Dooku would be the prime example. And I think you and I brought this up a few shows ago or whatever, where we said, hey, let's get that Dooku movie based off of either Jedi Lost. Well, that would probably be the most obvious one.
Right.
Because that would focus on Dooku. But even Master and Apprentice. Mm-hmm. Even though that focuses more on the Obi-Wan Qui-Gon dynamic, you do have some Dooku flashback scenes. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think a Dooku film, particularly a Disney Plus film, could work very well in a situation like that. Because he's a really interesting case.
Definitely.
In fact, I think he's probably the most famous of the Dark Jedi. Mm-hmm. Although, I mean, it's not really fair to say, because he does end up turning into a full-blown Sith Lord. Mm-hmm. But as you and I point out a lot, he's not like the other Sith. He seems to be more of a Dark Jedi. I mean, the Dark Jedi thing basically came up in a bunch of comic books and some books. And, they had some characters and everything like that, where...
Because technically you're a Dark Jedi. If you like, it's in a sense like Ahsoka is a Dark Jedi because...
Well, she's more of a gray Jedi, though.
Well, they don't call them that. I mean, they don't... Not like Disney or Lucas. Like, they
never did. They only did that in the expanded universe. But see, a Dark Jedi, the difference is...
It's just they just don't follow the Jedi code.
Well, that would be more of a gray Jedi, to where they don't follow the code. They're kind of in the middle, kind of a thing. A Dark Jedi is essentially a Sith without being a Sith. They fully embrace the dark side of the Force. They command it, but they're not using the Sith magics. They're not dealing with the Sith holocrons. They're basically still Jedi. They're just dark. I mean, I know it sounds kind of weird. Well, hey, I mean,
so would that make Asajj Ventress a Dark Jedi?
No, because she was never trained as a Jedi. But if she had been, then yes. How's that for confusing? No, because so she was trained under a Sith Lord to be a Sith, but she was never made one. Mm-hmm. See, and that's another dynamic that they could go through as well, right? Because, you have to be... And this is where the whole Sith thing comes, where you're almost like a Sith acolyte or something, where you're in training, and this is where it gets really weird, because some Sith okay, you are going to be a Sith Lord, here's your Darth name, and now we're going to get to training. Then there's other people who follow the ways and are trained under a Sith to be a Sith, but never end up becoming that. The Dark Jedi, on the other hand, let's say that Dooku left the Jedi Order and just fully embraced and developed a command over the dark side of the Force. Then he would be a Dark Jedi. Now, maybe he was still doing things for good, but he was doing them completely, under like a nefarious type of a thing, using the dark side of the Force. The Grey Jedi, on the other hand, are more the ones that believe in the balance. They're not really dark, they're not really light, they're just kind of...
chill.
Yeah. Almost like if a bounty hunter were a Jedi. But a bounty hunter is kind of selfish. Like Ahsoka is a perfect example of a Grey Jedi. A lot of people theorize that Qui-Gon was a Grey Jedi in disguise. Because just, the way that he would do things.
Right.
But, these are... And again, this is why we need more movies like this. These are some great storylines, and this is what we've been saying all along. It's like they keep coming up with these more substandard things. Even though, don't get me wrong, love Rogue One, love Solo, thought it was fun, didn't need it, but thought it was cool. Love The Force Awakens, even though it was a little derivative. Oh, yeah. And then Ronaldo says Mace Windu uses the dark side, supposedly, or at least some of it. Yeah, that's one of the things that we've been saying that was revealed, that he would probably be the closest thing that we've seen in movies to a dark Jedi. But he's still not really a dark Jedi because he uses the dark side, but he's not of the dark side.
Yeah, he'd be more like a Grey Jedi, honestly.
Yeah. Even though if you think about it, though, Mace is in some ways more dogmatic than even Yoda.
Yeah.
So it's really, and again, this goes back to what we were saying. This is why we need movies like this, because, they keep saying that, there's no source material. There's tons of source material. We're going over it now. What are we on, like number 2 of 5? But I mean, the thing is that there's all these great stories that they've put out that would just make fantastic movies or TV series. And then it's like, what are we getting?
Well, hopefully we'll be getting that stuff.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, Obi-Wan, I've been waiting for that. Cassian Andor, that was another one of those I didn't really care about, didn't think I wanted, but now I'm starting to really like the idea. So we'll have to see.
Yep. Well, the next one will be
what's number 3?
The Mandalorian Jedi Wars.
Oh yeah. See, this is another thing that they have yet to cover. Now here's the thing. You have the Clone Wars that were always talked about during the original trilogy. Well, at least in episode 4. And everybody had the exact same reaction. Like the what? What is that? Because if you think about it, there's no frame of reference. You don't see any clones in episode 4, 5, or 6. So, first of all, there's this war that they're talking about that you have no idea what they're talking about. Then it involves clones, which you've never seen, don't have any idea what this is. So then they finally get the idea, like, hey, Lucas says, okay, I'm going to make the prequels, and the thing is, the actual movies, though, he sets, like, just at the start of the Clone Wars and then just at the end of the Clone Wars. But at least we get a flavor of what that looks like. Now, when you get to the Clone Wars animated series, now you really get it. It's funny because I've started to watch that, like I said before, with my mom, and my dad actually came in on a couple of episodes when I was there watching with them, and he was still trying to get it. He's like, so wait a minute. So this takes place between 2 and 3? I'm like, oh yeah, man, there's like a whole span of time here. He is just having a really hard time understanding that. And I think that this is where a lot of people are. Now, when you talk about the Mandalorian Jedi Wars, this is something that has been referenced mostly in the expanded universe novels, a little bit in the new canon novels. Rebels, it was talked about quite a bit.
Yeah,
actually.
Went back to with Sabine. That whole story arc with Sabine and getting the lightsaber.
Well, and that's the thing. See, that's where they opened the door, I think. Mm-hmm. So now this is another episode 4 situation. Okay, you actually have a situation now where you have mentioned and prominently discussed a particular period of time. A particularly exciting period of time. Mm-hmm. My whole thing is, let's see it. Mm-hmm. This would be a really cool thing, and I think people now, especially because the Mandalorian series is out.
Oh yeah, people would love to see it.
People know who a Mandalorian is now.
Yeah.
You know, I remember back with the old Boba Fett thing, right? You know, you saw his thing. Oh, it's Mandalorian armor. You're like, okay, I don't know what that is. And, you know, the supposed backstory about Boba Fett before the prequels came out was that he was actually a Mandalorian by the name of Jaster Reel. Mm-hmm. And, well, that went out the window when Lucas decided to make the prequels. Which is another thing that I think Disney is actually in danger of nowadays, is that if they keep screwing around with the continuity, they're going to paint themselves in the corner, much like the old EU did. You know, where it's kind of like, oh, well, you know, or a movie gets made and that wipes out like half of the novels that are out. You know, what do you do? But I mean, how bad on a scale of 1 to 10 do you want to see the Mandalorian Jedi Wars? 12.
I'd say it's an 8. I think that would be really, because it's something that I think people both love equally. I think people love the Jedi.
Sure.
And people love Mandalorians. I think because, especially like I remember like that amazing singing towards the end of, well, no, it wasn't towards the end. It was like the middle of the Mandalorian, when like all those Mandalorians kind of helped him get out of that situation, and they all just kind of swooped down. I mean, that was sweet. I mean, they all had like different types of armor.
Yep, it's one of the highlights of the whole series, actually.
Like, whoa, okay, like.
Yeah, now can you just imagine, like, imagine the Clone Wars, but they're all Mandalorians instead?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, even like the season 7 of the Clone Wars, you know, that we just wrapped up. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, okay, we saw this whole the whole siege on Mandalore type thing. We saw the whole battle with Ahsoka going against Maul, but then you had like all these Mandalorians fighting, you know, all the different people. So it's just like, all right, well, and I imagine that's a bunch of lightsabers flying around,
right? Ronaldo basically said, that is the way. Yes. And that's it. I mean, I think that would just be the best thing that they could do. Now, here's the question, though. See, would it make a better series? Would it make a better movie or like a trilogy?
I think it would probably...
Animated, you know, I mean,
I think you could go with that one.
I'd actually like to see
movie.
Really?
Movie. Yeah.
I'd like to see animated series. I only say that because I think that you could do more and it could last longer.
Yeah, but I think this is one of the things that you don't need to necessarily make it last longer. I think this is one of those things that you can get a one and done out of it, but you can make it really good. Yeah,
you're probably right. Unless, of course, they want to do like a Game of Thrones style series.
Yeah, which this is, this article, they basically say, that's kind of...
Is that what they were modeling it after?
Kind of play it, yeah. You could do a Game of Thrones version of this. I mean, anytime you have stuff like that where you got,
that or the Old Republic or something.
The Old Republic, the whole Sith versus Jedi, you could always do... I mean, you could have like Sith, Jedi, Mandalorian, if you really wanted to make it all Clone War. I mean, all Game of Thrones-ish, So...
Did your light go out?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice. Well, now you really are a dark Jedi.
Yes, I am.
Ah, man, I got to start putting those stupid things on. I mean, we go for so long now. Usually those batteries last a lot longer. Hopefully mine doesn't go out. Or it's really going to be in the dark. Now you got a nice green tone. All right. Well, what's the next one?
A green friend.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next one is Pre-Lightspeed and Galactic Explorers of the Unknown. I know you're like, what the heck is that?
Well, no, I get it. I get it. I get what they're saying.
It's a no.
That's a little, that's a little
I'm
too
just
Star
put it
Trek.
out
That's Star Trek. That's kind of like Star Trek First Contact type stuff or Enterprise or whatever, where they were going into like before they discovered. I don't need to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's like a stupid suggestion. Whoever did that just doesn't even. Next.
Off you go. All right. The next one. Now, this one would be cool. And we kind of touched on this. But operations of the crime syndicates. Now, this is cool because we kind of talked about it because George Lucas actually wanted to do a series based on the underworld of Coruscant. And so I think this could fit perfectly into that because now they're actually talking about, Aurora Singh, Cad Bane, Hondo, the Pike Syndicate, the Hutts, Black Sun, the Night Brothers, Death Watch, all those different types of characters and those types of factions. Now that would be cool.
Okay.
Like I can deal with that.
That would be cool. Yeah. See, now that actually makes more sense to me.
Because then now you can kind of do like almost like a mob gangsters type.
Oh,
thing
there's so many things that you could do.
Now you can deal with the whole smuggler stuff. You can kind of deal with the spice running. I mean,
pirates,
and then it's like, all right, who's double crossing who?
Well, that's not even just like a movie concept. I mean, now you're spawning all different kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. That's like,
yeah,
that would be really intense and really cool.
That right there to me would be a TV series.
Yeah,
that's definitely like Disney Plus.
Oh yeah,
all day.
If you were gonna do just one thing, if not, you could actually do multiple stuff. You could do a series. You could do a couple of movies. You could do a thing to where, like what I was suggesting with the Mandalorian at one point, where you could do like. You have a season, and then you do a movie based on...
Oh, yeah, or vice versa, yeah.
Yeah, or vice versa, right, where you do a movie, and then you have, it continues in this... Basically, like what they should do now with Solo, right? Let's now see a Disney Plus series that maybe features Lando, maybe features Han, but definitely features the Crimson Dawn and Kira and all that stuff. All right, was that it for...
That's it.
All right, well, as usual, let us know what you guys think. What would you like to see? Leave it in the comment section. We're so fixated sometimes on our live audience that, hey, if you guys are watching this on the rebroadcast, leave your comments in the comment section. We read and respond to every one of them. Let us know what you guys think. What movies do you want to see? What TV series do you want to see? Is there a story in a book or something that you're like, hey, I think that this would make a really good movie or TV series? Let us know. All right. You know what it's time for now?
Yes, your favorite segment.
My favorite. Little segment we call Clear Your Mind. That's right. This is where we answer your questions. What do we got first? Or I should say, who do we have first?
The first question comes from Matt Varn. And his question is, do we know if the prophecy has been fulfilled, or are we still waiting on the chosen one?
Oh, who knows? I mean, this has gotten so convoluted, man. I mean, look, for most of the time, Anakin was the chosen one. He brought balance to the Force.
Like I brought that light back.
I guess. So it's going to be one of those kind of things. All right. So, yeah, I mean, it just, the Force, we had this conversation before. It goes in and out of balance. He did bring balance to the Force. But the bottom line is that was Lucas's vision. Disney has it now. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, and I think there's always going to be a chosen one. Like,
that's another option, right? Like, so, okay, he was that generation's chosen one.
Exactly.
Force goes out of balance again. Now somebody else will be the chosen one.
Yeah, and I look at that like, when people are talking about athletes, like, oh, Michael Jordan is like the greatest basketball. He's the greatest of all time. And I'm like, for his era. But it's like, you can't negate, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You can't negate Bill Russell. Or now, okay, well, LeBron James is like
sure.
The guy. Or Kobe Bryant was like, to me, for my era, as far as truly growing up, I'm in that balance between Kobe and
I mean,
Jordan.
Yeah, you could take all the quote unquote greatest of all time players, right, stack them up against each other, and who is really
you're not really going to have one superior person because it keeps going on. Who knows? 20 years from now, somebody can completely wipe Jordan's stuff completely off the map. We
Sure.
don't know.
Well, records are broken all the time, right?
Exactly. So it's just like, okay, but we can say at that point, he definitely revolutionized and changed the way the game was played, marketed. So yes, you can say for that period of time, yes. So until the next person does that, okay, he may hold that title for a moment. So as far as the chosen one, I think that Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one. He's the one who brought the Force back into balance after some years. And then after that, now we have Rey, who seems to be...
And that's exactly what Ronaldo was saying. Maybe Rey was the next chosen one.
Exactly.
And that's pretty much it. Because you can make the argument that she was, because as Snoke had said... when darkness rises, light rises to meet it. So, if the Force is choosing her to do it, I think the only distinction that I would make, though, is that basically Anakin was the only one who was born of the Force. So, does that make him the chosen one plus? It's one thing to actually have the Force... chooses somebody to rise up against something like a dark that's bringing it out of balance, or raise a dark to bring, to get basically the light is taking over. It's one thing to actually raise up somebody, but the fact that he was born, but again, this all goes back to this crazy prophecy, though, that he happened to fulfill. So... where does that fit in the grand scheme of things? What made that period of time where the Force actually had to conceive a kid in order to stop, whatever was happening?
Well, I think what happened at that time period is you have to look at you got to look at the history. And if you look at it from the standpoint of, okay, the Sith have been gone, or thought to have been gone for a millennia. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that means one particular side was out of the light side held it for such a long time.
Well, I was going to say that maybe Palpatine was so powerful.
And that's where I was going. So now Palpatine had to be that powerful and that cunning and conniving in order to start to blind. Because you got to think about it, it's like... one man blinded the entire Jedi Order. When you stop and really think about that, it was just him. Granted, he might have had some help, with the dark side, his little different disciples he's had, Dooku and stuff like that, mm-hmm. or Maul, but he was the mastermind behind it all. So the fact that he was able to start shifting the tide and start to push the Jedi out, and then of course you needed someone as equally powerful. So then when you look at it from the standpoint of now the Force created Anakin, but Anakin had to play both sides to bring that balance. He had to start light and go dark.
Well, and that's another thing that was definitely something to point out. Yeah,
his son,
and he's the only one, I think, that actually fully went to the dark side and came back. Well, there is Kylo now, mm-hmm. but that's later though. He was the first.
So when you look at it from the standpoint of all right, now you had Luke, who now he's the son of, he's basically the grandson of the Force. So then now Palpatine is vanquished, and you had Luke, and then Vader died. He went to the light side of the Force. So then now the light is too powerful again for a number of years until Kylo, who had to be his equal. You see what I'm saying?
It goes back and it goes back and forth.
Dynamics, that's why the Skywalker thing was so crazy, was because they were too powerful. That family, that bloodline was too powerful. And so...
Well, and I think that this is one of the reasons why I think that this goes back to the whole origin of the Jedi thing that we were talking about, where you need something to define this stuff.
Right.
Because the problem is, it's almost like if you have a roof, and instead of replacing the roof, you just start adding on and doing pretty soon, piecemealing it together, maybe doing some repairs and stuff. Pretty soon, it's it's just going to be bad. I mean, at some point, you just have to tear the whole thing down and rebuild it.
Right.
And that's, I think, what's happening. You had George's vision, which within the movies that he made and the TV series and stuff he made, it all works. Mm-hmm. There's no real contradictions or, well, I won't say that, but I mean, it's pretty much a streamlined vision. Mm-hmm. When you start getting Disney now adding all this stuff on top of it, it's like, okay, we need to go back here and reestablish some rules and retcon and explain some of this stuff. So going forward, we have something that makes sense.
Right.
Instead of further convolutes the whole storyline. All right. Well, hopefully that answers that question. What's the next one?
This one should be a little bit easier.
Okay, that's good. Because these are getting kind of tough these days, man.
What is your favorite film out of the sequel trilogy and why?
Well, that's not easier.
That's not how the Force works.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm tempted to say The Force Awakens. But, I mean, I warm up more to Rise of Skywalker a lot, though.
Yeah, I mean, this is a difficult one, but I would probably say I would probably say The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens, I agree. It would probably be my favorite out of it.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to, because, well, first of all, I had the least problems.
Yeah.
Secondly, it was a good movie. It basically followed the same beats as Episode 4, but that was by design. Mm-hmm. And it introduced us to a bunch of really cool characters. I thought it was really cool how they continued Han Solo's storyline. Mm-hmm. You know, so I mean, there's a plethora of reasons why. You know, the only thing that I will say about Rise of Skywalker, besides the fact that it was really action-packed, it was fun, it did have some problems. It had some pretty big ones, actually, but I don't think it detracted. I didn't think I was going to like the whole redemption of Kylo Ren, but I ended up loving it. In fact, it made me want to see more Ben Solo. Mm-hmm. But aside from that, I thought that as perfect as any movie in the sequel trilogy could be, I thought The Force Awakens was that.
Yeah, I would say The Force Awakens was great because I think it gave you all the things that make Star Wars Star Wars. I think it gave you the right amount of comedy. It gave you the right characters. It gave you the right story. Mm-hmm. I think it was beautifully shot. I think it definitely was the great setup movie. I think it was I don't think you could have made a better setup movie for the rest of the trilogy. Like, I think that was a perfect setup, and if they would just plan more, I think the rest of the movies could have just been phenomenal. But I just think that when you look at the humor, from Kylo to Poe to Finn, the humor that they have, even, just Han being and just having that veteran cast there as, to kind of anchor everything too. You got Han Solo shooting Chewbacca's crossbow. He's like, I don't like this thing. That's not how the Force works.
That's still the best. Just to hear him talking about Jedi and the Force all the time was just so otherworldly. I mean, first of all, you got to look at the fact that even to have Harrison Ford back was so mind-blowing. Yeah. And to see him actually in the Han Solo clothing once again, playing that character was just constantly, you had to pinch yourself. Yeah. And then add to that the fact that he was probably the funniest he was in any of the films.
Definitely.
And then talking about the Jedi and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, you saw so much depth in him.
Yes.
Like, you saw him as the father figure, which was cool. Mm-hmm.
He was kind of like the Obi-Wan of that movie in a way.
He was like the father figure to Rey. Mm-hmm. Even to Poe, not to Poe, to Finn a little bit. When he realized that Finn was lying, he was like, look, man, they always find out. Just kind of like just dropping those little nuggets of wisdom. It's like, he still kind of had that, getting himself in trouble and out of trouble. We're kind of like, don't I always, yes, I do. And I always, so I think it's
one of the funniest scenes I thought was, what was the line he said when he was about to come back from, out of light speed into the Star Killer base, and he said something like, "I never know until I do it," or something.
Yeah. I never know until I actually done it.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that that whole thing was cool. So, Ronaldo basically says, "I think that scene with Han and Kylo, which I love, would have made more sense with Force Ghost Luke instead of Han, and it would have been a good payoff for the see you around kid." I thought the same thing. I actually thought the same thing. Is that, in fact, when he basically said, "Hey kid," or whatever it was, and Kylo turned around, I thought it was Force Ghost Luke. That was another surprise from The Rise of Skywalker. I'm like, whoa. Because that was another best-kept secret that nobody knew Harrison Ford was returning.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, maybe he would be like if they were doing a funeral thing or something, or maybe they would mention him. Never mentioned it. It's like, I think it would have been a little bit more. I mean, I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to do the bookend of the original conversation he had to show his change, and even using some of the same lines. And there was a certain emotional context to that. But I agree that I think that in order for that to really have the impact it could have had, he should have been talking to Luke. It would have made more sense. Because it would have continued when Leia was trying to reach him through the Force and fill him up with light side or whatever. If now that he was returning, Luke, and because he never really got to have that conversation and closure with Luke. And that's where I think that it was somewhat of a disservice.
Yeah.
Is that, he killed Han. And Han's not a Force ghost. It was a figment of his imagination. And they could have, if they absolutely had to do that, they could have done both. As soon as, he turned around and then Han was gone, Luke could have then appeared, and then they could have had another extra little dialogue.
Or would have actually been really dope. Would have been, he's talking to Han, but then or Han's talking to hey kid, and he's like, I don't know if I have the strength to do it, and then it fades away and it's actually Luke.
See, because
and then you'd have been like Luke projected himself as Han because he knew that was.
See, that would have been cool because actually, what I first
got a 2-for-1 on that one,
dude. I swore up and down when we first saw that movie. Actually, the first 2 times I saw it, I thought that was Leia projecting herself as Han. Which that would have made more sense.
Yeah.
Because now you have this it would have added, because come on, you just say Ben and then all of a sudden it's oh, well, I'm kind of good now because I feel warm and fuzzy or something. It's I mean, you could make the argument that Leia never actually confronted Kylo, so maybe when she did that, and because she's, Han was not somebody that was a Force user, because she was actually another Jedi, she can sort of amplify things with the Force a little bit, and that you could say that, but I think that would have been a better way to go. Either one of those I thought might have worked, but again, I mean, it's this is part of the problem, I think, overall, that we kind of experience with this series is they'll come up with something that's really cool and then they'll do something completely different, and you're like, why did you do that? You guys are professionals.
Yeah.
What part of you thought this was a good idea?
But I think that's the problem, though, and this is the issue I see with just not only in movies but in life, where people are trying to push the envelope so much that it's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's sometimes you just have to let things naturally or organically happen. And I think you'll find that that's where the jewel is. Now, a lot of people are just in this state of, okay, I want to be something different. So they try to think of the most outlandish and wild thing they can do without purpose, without perspective, without all these things. It's just like, just for the, as we say on social media, just for likes, or just for the, woo, okay, that was cool, but it's like, but what purpose did it really serve? And does it give you true perspective into it? So I think if that would have happened, like I said, true perspective would have been like, okay, the fact that when Kylo last saw Luke and he tried to kill him, and he one realized that he was fighting a force projection, and then he's like, yeah, I'm more powerful than you think.
Yeah, I'd be like, as soon as he realized he was fighting a force projection, Kylo had to have been like, uh-oh.
And the fact that
you can do that
real,
now?
Yeah, and then he's just like, all right, see you around, kid, So for him to pop back up.
See, and that's it.
Like
there was no, it's kind of like what Ronaldo was saying. There's no payoff. Like he said that whole see you around kid, which you thought, oh man, episode 9 is going to be hilarious. Yep. It's going to basically be Luke popping up, every 5 minutes or whatever. Yeah. I mean, there was never an actual payoff for that moment. Mm-hmm. Instead, we got a bunch of, once again, it was fan service.
Of him raising the X-Wing up.
Yeah, I mean, and it was, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool. But it's like, do people really think, especially if you read the old expanded universe, it's like, yeah, we know Luke can raise the X-Wing now, right? We don't need it. We get it. Yeah, we know he's powerful.
We know he can do that.
Yeah.
If you could project yourself.
Like that was like that was supposed to be some big tear-jerking moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was cool. Like, all right, yeah, he's finally able to do it. And I see what would have been impressive is like, okay, if Rey knew how to do it.
Well, but then people would have criticized it though, like, oh, what? She can raise X, I mean.
Well, but see, you got to look at from the standpoint of, okay, especially if Luke is there guiding her. That's what I'm saying. No different than like when Yoda was there to show. But
well, what's funny about that though is like I can just imagine Luke going to Yoda like, "Hey, you remember how far down that X-wing was? Check it out. I could lift it from all the way down there, all the way up in the air. It's like almost like showing off in a way."
Yeah,
but
flying the stupid thing. Baby.
But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, if it was Rey and it was sort of like under his thing, it's almost like Luke is now successfully teaching somebody. See, but that's my point. There's all these moments that they missed.
Yeah.
That they could have done.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I can think of this, they can think of this.
True.
So I don't know. I think that's one of the things that frustrates me. And then when you read Colin Trevorrow's Duel of the Fates script or outline or whatever, you're just like, oh, man.
I know.
See, this is a movie we could have gotten.
Yep.
Now, hey, for all I know, we could have gotten that, and we would have been bagging on that too.
Yeah, because it looks good on paper doesn't mean it would have translated.
And that's basically it. But when something looks good on paper, it's this is one of the things that I caution everybody, because I've had discussions with people where they felt the same way, like, oh, check this out, this would have been so much better. I'm like, well, you think so, but who knows what the execution would have been like? Mm-hmm. They could have totally botched this up.
Yep.
Or it could have been like a Rogue One thing where it's kind of like half the movie's not even, like they release this like really epic trailer and then none of the scenes are in the movie.
Right.
So I don't know. I just think that they need to really think about where they want to go next. To figure out like what I would do if I were them. I don't even know if this is really how they should do it at a franchise movie level, but they should make a list of all these characters that they want to develop and then figure out a general story arc for each one of them. This is where they end up, whether it's death, whether it's, okay, they ride off into the sunset, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Figure out the basic story arcs. Then once you have all these story arcs, start to look to where you could have a little bit of crossover. Hey, well, Ezra's on this journey, and then, Ahsoka's on this journey, and, hey, they kind of intersect here, so we could probably do, like, some sort of crossover thing. Then you do that. Then you start to plan, what mediums do you want to put this on? Is this person's story arc going to take place predominantly in a movie or a TV show or what? And then is it going to be supplemented by a book or a comic? Then you do that. Then you start to actually work on whatever it is, whether it's a movie or TV series or what. Mm-hmm. That's what I think they should do.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they're not going to do it that way.
Of course not.
You know, I mean, I don't actually for one fleeting second think that that's actually going to happen. But again, I think that it could happen that way. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's really interesting when we sit there and we pick on these little moments like the whole redemption of Kylo Ren. Should it have been Luke? Should it have been, you know, could we have done it differently? Mm-hmm. And it is easy to just look back on a movie and say, well, you know, they could have done this, they could have done that. But a lot of times what I find is funny is that the fans, and by fans I mean all of us, will sit there and say, well, they should have done this or they should have done that. I caution you guys, though, that remember, some of the fans are the same ones that are out there saying, you know, Snoke is really Mace Windu, and, you know, Jar Jar was really a Sith Lord, and even though that I actually thought was kind of a cool little thing that guy did, but still, I mean, the fans have come up with some pretty stupid, outlandish theories too, though.
True.
You know, so I mean, it's kind of like to leave it in the hands of us, you know, is kind of crazy. Ronaldo says, we will never know if Duel of the Fates would have been cool or not, but at least it would feel more coherent with the last 2 episodes. Now, on that,
I completely
that is a dead-on good point.
Yes.
Good or bad, it would have at least felt like it was part of the same trilogy.
Right.
Because that's frankly, one of the problems that we have with The Rise of Skywalker. Well, there's a couple. One of the biggest one is the conveniences. There was absolutely no tension whatsoever. They go to do a thing. They achieve the thing very easily. They go on to the next thing. They just magically happen to trip over stuff. I mean, they would have had to try hard to fail at anything that they were trying to do. There didn't seem to be any stakes in that movie. That was the thing that bothered me. But aside from that, Rise of Skywalker felt to me almost like a sequel to The Force Awakens, more than a continuation of the trilogy.
True.
Whereas Duel of the Fates definitely was keeping, and I'm not saying that JJ actually contradicted Rian Johnson in any way. I mean, if anything, he did further some of the stuff. Because a lot of people give Rian Johnson crap, and this is one way where I'll say, look, he was basically outlining the fact that Rey's parents were nobody. But that, when you read back in J.J. Abrams, one of his early interviews, that's basically what he wanted. Mm-hmm. That's what he was setting up in The Force Awakens. Now, he did take some risks with Luke. You know, there were some things that some people were critical of. There were definitely some different directional issues that were present. You know, we did do a review. If you guys care to go back, and it's actually, I think, like, our second episode ever? I think it was like our second or third episode.
Oh, it's about
that we did the Last Jedi review. Yeah. That was an audio-only podcast. It is here on YouTube. We have all of the podcasts
on our website.
We have it on our website too, headtoheadswpodcast.com. But if you stick with YouTube, even all you guys on Twitch or Facebook or whatever, if you come to our YouTube channel, we do have even the audio-only podcasts. We have them. And we did do a very extensive review, I remember, of The Last Jedi, and we talked about all the issues. But when all that's said and done, the Duel of the Fates script definitely felt like it was a continuation of that trilogy.
Well, the only one thing I just have to say about Rise of Skywalker.
Uh-oh.
How did the Knights of Ren get to Exegol?
You know, I never thought of that.
And with that, let's go, ladies and gentlemen.
I have never actually thought of that. Yeah, how did they get there? And how did they get there before anybody else got there?
Like, because navigating just to get to Exegol.
Well, and ridiculous. I mean, as long as we're picking on this stuff, that actually brings up an even bigger issue that, you know, it's like you saw how hard it was to navigate to it, right? One ship. I mean, so how did all those 10,000 ships?
Well, at least at least in that regard, they actually answered that one.
How?
Because when Rey went, when she had the holocron, remember there was like she's showing us the way. They posted it. She's showing us how to get there.
Dude, that was like a really narrow. So it's not like all 10,000 ships could just follow this, coordinate. They'd almost have to go single file, like Sand People style here, through this really super treacherous thing that was like dangerous. So you had to be this really good pilot to do.
Yeah, well, I think that's why they led the way. But
I mean, that's just one of those things that, again,
and maybe that's why. Well, see, I think that's what took all the other ships so long. That's like, well, where is everybody? It was like, well, dude, everybody can't,
Well, but that's the thing, dude. They had like these giant freighters. I'm like, dude, there's no way in the world that ship back there could have possibly made it with all these twists and turns. And
well, see, the cool thing about the bigger ships is that they actually had.
Well, you mean the deflection?
No, they
abilities?
actually had hyperspeed. They can bypass all that because they have hyperdrives. But if you remember, like everybody else outside of the Falcon, and the Falcon, like I said, once again, they came later. But
well, it's because Lando was in it. He was going to get everybody.
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying. He had to they had to get the coordinates on how to get there so they can put it into the Navi computer so they can pull up.
Right, but it was one thing to actually know where it was. Because remember, there's two elements that you have to look at with Exegol.
Mm-hmm.
One, where is it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one even knows where it is. Okay, so you solve that problem. But then it's a little bit treacherous to get there.
Yeah, but that's why, like, when Poe was actually guiding, he was like, okay, she's showing us the way. He said, stay close to me. And he was actually in front. So wherever he went, they just followed behind because they were in smaller fighters. So they could navigate through that treacherous terrain. But see, when you're in a freighter like the Falcon, the Ghost, and all those other big ships, you have the advantage of hyperspace where you can just put it in the coordinates and you pop up. That's how they all got there. Does that make sense?
I guess. So Ronaldo's basically like, I really think an animated series set between 8 and 9 could be useful to explain some plot holes in Rise of Skywalker. It could help just like Clone Wars helped to explain things between 2 and 3. And yeah, I think that, well, let me go back. I think that actually they need to make more stuff between 6 and 7.
Yeah, 6 and 7, but I also would say, like, there weren't any. It's not so much the plot holes between the movies, it was the plot holes in the movies.
Yeah, I mean, really most of what we're talking about is the plot holes in the movies.
Yeah.
I mean, he's correct in the sense of there are some things, because obviously 7 and 8 happens immediately. I mean, there's like no time whatsoever. Yeah. You can't make a movie in between 7 and 8.
Right.
But, well, I take that back. You could if you talked about something else that was happening at the same time. Kind of like what they did with the Clone Wars thing, you know?
Yeah, 3.
Yeah, right. So you could do something like, I mean, that would be lame, but you could do it.
That's the only way, yeah.
But 8 and 9, what was it, 2 years?
Yeah.
3, something like that?
2 to 3 years.
So you could do some stuff. Like here, I'll tell you exactly what plot hole that would cover is the Palpatine coming back thing.
Yeah.
You know, you do something like that. Because, like, you know, you get expanded versions of that, but you get it, like, in Fortnite. You know, like, I'm not even going to touch that.
Yeah, we're not.
But the thing is that, yes, you could do that. You could actually say, okay, here's some stuff. But, especially if you're talking about, like, kind of a Clone Wars kind of thing, if you made more stuff between 6 and 7...
Yeah.
I think that might help, too.
That would show, like, the Knights of Ren. That would show Kylo's fall, all that stuff. Snoke, where did he come from? All that jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that even if you go earlier, because actually the time period, it's a little bit greater than the time period between 3 and 4, but look at how much crap they're putting in between 3 and 4. I mean, it's like everything seems to happen between 3 and 4.
Well, yeah, you still have a significant space of time, too, so yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, think of what you have, like 1.5 times that amount between 7 and 8, or I'm sorry, right, between 6 and 7, yeah. And that's my whole thing. Is like, why not just do that? But all right, I think that's gonna wrap up our show for tonight, especially because one of our lights keeps going off and on. So that kind of sucks. So we'll have them plugged in next time. But don't forget, guys, that next week is going to be a pre-recorded show. So we'll still be here to chat with you guys live. We're going to set it as a premiere on YouTube. So if you want to check it out, come to the YouTube channel next Friday at 8 p.m. as usual. But this time we'll be available to chat with you guys while we're all watching it. And, in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about the secret life of William Hookins, who is none other than Porkins. Because this guy's actually had kind of a really weird, even had a connection to the JFK assassination. So we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about some of the different movie characters he's done, because he's actually played a lot of guys I didn't realize. Like, I totally didn't know he was Eckhardt in Batman. Mm-hmm. He was also one of the FBI or whatever guys that approached Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That one I didn't know. Yeah,
there's like all kinds of like characters he's played that you're like, no way, he was in that, or he was that guy.
I didn't know he was Eckhardt though.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, wow, mind blown. So a couple of weeks we're gonna cover this guy, and see what we can uncover with him. So until then, until next week, may the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.